And we're here. It's week 10.
That was a power move. Coming in
Was
with that
it?
intro. Yeah, I feel like a little bit. Like I feel like you were lying about needing to be gone, and you came back in here with that,
I
and it was
spent
like a plot.
all 3 weeks on making that intro. The first
Like
track was
what?
terrible, though. Don't go back and listen to it. We were listening. It doesn't fit the vibe of the rest of it. Thank you, Canva.
Yeah, I'm a little upset and I'm worried about that. I lost faith in your judgment, but it's fine.
What's everybody doing? Andy's in here. I think Andy's already started the drinking game for the night. Allie, hey friend, what's up? Already? It's 9/11. Did we start early? Who knows?
It's 8:11 for me
The
for cool
beats
people.
them beats were smooth. Yeah. Man, hey Nicole. Everybody's starting to trickle in. It's good to see everybody. So I've been gone for 3 weeks, as you guys know, and before I get
It was
into
more than 3. Don't lie about
it
it.
was 3 episodes, wasn't it? Or was it
No,
4?
I think
Was
it
it
was
4?
4.
Oh
Yeah.
god. I owe you more than I think.
So I've
I
had a
owe
lot of abandonment
Allie.
issues,
Oh,
that have
Allie
come
started
up.
about 20 comments before. So we did a thing tonight. If you're just getting in, we had a countdown. It was like very official and everything. So like some sweet royalty free jams. It was 15 episodes. Allie, I owe you a great debt. Hey Austin,
50
man.
episodes.
So I wanted to say thank you guys before I got too far in tonight. You guys have flooded my DMs and stuff over the past month. As you guys know, my dad had a significant medical event a month and a day ago from today. And so my world's been flipped upside down. I'm basically a former cast member at this point, pretty much. Hey, Katie, I saw that you came on last week. Good to see you back. But yeah, just
I
want
almost
to thanks for all the messages and all the support. And like, I ended up having meals with one family from this community and got invites from these people here, the Snyders. They offered me a place to sleep and everything else when I was out in Knoxville. So thank you all for all the support. Anyways, to tonight. So the band's back together. We're back together. This is fun. This feels good. We have tonight's episode 10. We have a special guest tonight that we are very excited about. One quick thing before we bring her on. There is a pinned comment that gives you the link to join if you guys would like to hop on with us tonight. We put that on there early, but we won't be bringing people on until 10 after the next hour. But you guys feel free to pop in so that you're ready to go. That way we don't have all the downtime and can have some more quality combos. So tonight our guest is a dear friend of mine. I don't want to spoil the story because I actually want to hear her side of it. That we reconnected post IHOP in some very transitional times in both of our lives. And so she is one of my favorite people, one of the smartest people I know. Her work ethic and her compassion and empathy. You guys are gonna love her if you don't know her. So she is, as far as like professional accolades, she has numerous post grad degrees. I can't even keep up with them. Very well educated. Probably has she definitely has at least double our combined education, Susan. And so she is a prolific podcaster. She's been doing podcast game forever, runs her own nonprofit called Subculture, which I'm sure you'll hear about at some point tonight, that helps Black college students go to college and stay in college and make it all the way through. And she's been doing great work there for a long time. And there's other thing. Oh, she's author. That was a thing. That's the most important piece. She released a book this past year. And there is a link in, we'll try to get it here in a minute. Once we start talking, I'll grab it, put it in the chat here. But it's on a previous post, Faith Unleavened, and you can check that out. But without further ado, Let's
What's
change this
good?
up. Here we go. There we
Oh,
go.
thank
Now we
appreciate
can see
that.
everybody. Woo! Woo! How are you, friend?
I'm living the dream at
So
9 p.m.
you and 9 p.m. I kept you out late. You got kids and stuff now.
Indeed. Indeed.
So this is the first time you and Susan have met, I think, right? Have you guys met before?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good to
Like
meet you too.
face to virtual face. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Did you-
came late today. Just skated in at the last minute when the intro was already going, so I haven't even gotten to talk to Tammy, so I'm going to meet her with the rest of you.
Hey, Heather.
It's good.
So,
Heather.
yeah, so this is gonna be a fun time. If you want to jump right in, if we just like already just like start shooting,
I'm here.
I'm gonna tell my side of this story for a second, if that's okay. Then I want to
Okay.
hear
Yeah.
what you said. So,
Okay.
in 2020, when everybody's world started falling apart, mine started turning around, which is a weird thing. I don't think I've shared this before here, but I actually was like disabled for about 2 years, had vertigo and a bunch of health issues, and wasn't able to work. And 2020 was kind of my re-entry back into society, so it was a big time for me. Ended up getting roped into by a friend a leadership program through the Baptist General Association of Virginia called Uptick, and a bunch of great people, but just totally wouldn't have normally been my scene at all. And I don't think it would have been Tamisa's scene either, I don't think. And we end up doing this year-long program, and I walk into the beach house in Sandbridge. I'm sitting on the couch, and all of a sudden in walks Tamise, and I'm like, holy shit, like what in the world's going on? What did you know that did we? I don't think we knew that each other was going to be
Allie? No, I hadn't seen you since Kansas City. Like I had no clue you were gonna
and we
be. I
weren't
didn't
even
even know you
really
were in Virginia.
friends in KC either. Like we knew
Not
who
really.
each
I mean,
other
we
were.
knew each other were, yeah, but yeah.
And so I think that first night sitting down and us rehashing IHOP stuff, it was first that
Man.
either of us had talked about it a whole
Yeah.
lot. And one of the few things that I remember was it being the first night that I was able to confidently say that I thought IHOP was a cult. And I think you were the one who kind of like gave me that little boost of courage to be able to call a spade a spade.
Indeed. Yeah, I had just finished calling it a spade, let's be real. Hey, Jane.
So tell everybody tell everybody who you are. Like, if I don't know if you want to talk about your family and kid and
Yeah.
pets and all that kind of stuff or not, but and maybe just like tell people like what kind of stuff you've done and accomplished, whatever, however you want to talk about yourself. Let people know.
I mean, I think you did all of that, but I'll say, yeah, I live in Richmond, Virginia. After I left Kansas City, I moved to Atlanta. I did campus ministry down there for a while with Black students, got married, and then moved to Virginia, back to Virginia to move in with my parents after I had my daughter. So I've just been kind of trying to get a business off the ground since about 2018. It's basically kind of what I've been doing. I got divorced and then I got married again to my spouse, Ellison. And we have my daughter, Harlem, who is 5, who's turning 6 in March. And we have a puppy named Beacon.
She was reading last night. Like I felt parenting shame without you having to do anything. I was like, this girl, I was like, she's reading full sentences.
It was wild. Like she just started reading one day. It was crazy. So, but yeah, I mean, that's me. I'm happy in life.
How did you end up in KC? Like, just so everybody kind of has a frame of reference where you came from, and then tell us what you did at the house prayer.
Yeah, so I was going to school. I was in college from 2002 to 2006. So while I was in school, I was going to the One Thing conference. I first found out about IHOP through this girl, Natalie, that I went to high school with. So she had gone out there after high school, and then I went to the first One Thing conference. I think it was 04, One Thing 04. I went out there, had my whole life turned upside down, went back home and started telling everybody on campus about it. That was a part of this, like,
what was it that was impactful for you? Because that's like a big part of everybody's story. So like for me, it was like prophetic history and got sucked into that somehow. Like, do you remember what it was that kind of like got you hooked?
Nah, I mean, I just think that there had never been an opportunity to experience God like that. It was very majestic. That's back in the day when it was in Arrowhead, or it was not Arrowhead, when it was in municipal building. So it was like, I think that was the one they had like Jason Upton at that one, Shane and Shane was at that one. So it was like, oh my gosh, it was just majestic. And so it hooked. I mean, I was young and it was like being at a Coldplay concert or something like that. You feel a lot of things, you make a lot of decisions, and that's what I did. So I went back and I was like, y'all have to go. God is here. And you never heard anybody talk about Jesus like that ever before. Like you never heard a message like that ever before. It was so exciting and majestic is the way I would describe it. And so I went back and I started bringing all my friends. Every year we would get these like big minivans. Somebody would lie about their age or something, or at least try. You had to be 25 back in the day. And we would get these big vans, man, and drive out there every year. Then I was going to the conferences, like I was going to Passion for Jesus and even the Israel ones, any of those like kind of middle conferences that they had. I would save up all my money. This was back when AirTrain was a thing, and fly AirTrain to Kansas City.
I don't
try to
remember
find
this.
somebody to pick me up, staying in Hern
Dang.
Hut, like sleeping on the carpets. Like I was hooked. Yeah, so that was in like 04, and then I moved out there in 08 after that. Like God is calling Black people to the house of prayer. That one got me.
Popping into IHOP, is that what it was?
I dropped
Just
out
out
of
of-
grad school right there on the spot, called my parents and was like, I'm not coming home, like literally. And stayed out there, moved out there in 08.
Not sleeping on
Yes, child. All over the place. I can still remember the smell too, child.
So what was your family's response to that? So like mine was like very hesitant coming out and stuff. Did your family have anything to say about you coming out there?
Yeah. When I called them that night, Ali is wild. When I called them that night, I was like, I have to move out here. I had a dream about Misty, and Misty told me it was time to move to Kansas City. My mom was like, who the fuck is Misty first? And then and so my mom was like, but this is what's cool. Is my mom was like, if you feel like that's what God is saying, do it. Then my dad called and was like, every time you go out there, you start talking crazy. He's like, you're ruining your life. Don't do it. And he was like, if you do this, we won't talk to you again. Like they really were that mad about me. And then I'm like, I leave my father, my mother. Like I
pull that
thought,
right back
album
out.
You know what I
drop,
mean?
Too.
The
Yeah.
music, I mean, the music aided and abetted a lot of this. So so I was like, well, fine, I'm gonna drop out, and some people paid for me to go out there and do the internship, and I did the internship in January of 08. I moved out there on my 24th birthday. It was wild.
Wow.
It was really wild.
Hey, Nick.
Hey, Nate.
Man, so what did you do after you got there? Like, did you did an internship, right?
Yeah, after I did my internship,
I think your
I worked
internship
for
with my roommates. So I think all my roommates whenever I moved to Kansas City, except like
Yeah.
one of them. So it's Bruce, Kim
Bruce. Yeah.
was in
Yeah.
that, and then Casey. Oh man, I can't remember. Long hair Jesus
Oh
Casey.
yeah,
You know what I'm
Jesus
talking about?
guy. He's so precious.
They were my
I
roommates, and
remember
then
him.
a couple other guys too that I don't think would have been done one thing. But
What's his last name? I don't
so I
remember his
always knew about you, and people always talked about you, but we never
I
connected.
was trying to hustle. I was like writing music and stuff and like selling CDs so I could stay.
And some of that stuff was a bop. Some of that was
I feel like I had a bop or two. Yeah.
yeah, you did. You definitely did. And so you did the one thing internship. How was that experience? Mostly pleasant for you?
Yeah, let me think about it right quick. Yeah, I had really dope leaders. Like I came so right the year before me was like a very dynamic class. So my class was a little more like low key. There were a lot of like sort of I just remember the way ad hoc worked. It was very tiered, right? So like you knew who the like uh people who leadership had their eyes on, right? So
Yep.
the class that had come in right before me was like filled with those kinds of like future, leaders or whatever. So our class was kind of low key, but our dynamic was really close. So me and my internship, there was a lot of closeness there, and I really appreciated that. So I had a really positive internship experience for sure. And plus I had Wes Martin. I love Wes. I love Wes. So yeah, he was my internship leader. I think that had a lot to do with it, and it was just cool. It was a sweet time. I think.
And you went from that into leading interns, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's
No,
what you were like
after my
notorious for.
internship, I started working for the regionals with Dwayne.
Oh, really? I didn't know
Yeah, so I
that.
was traveling with the regional One Thing conferences. And I don't know why they put me on the sound team, but yeah, I was helping with the sound team. And then I came back and then they asked me to do the internship, the next internship after that. Because things kind of work in like 6-month
Yeah,
sections when you're in
yeah.
the internship circuit. So
Dang. So then you start core leading, and that's whenever I found out about you because you had a reputation around IHOP, a good one, of like being a which is I can't believe I'm saying this, but people saying that you were a good leader and that you were known for discipleship and stuff and actually caring about people and investing in people.
yeah.
And I'm not just saying this just to toot your horn, but you could tell a difference from like girls that were in your group versus girls who weren't. Like they took
Wow.
things more. Maybe that could be a bad. I don't know. You might be able to speak of that, but
Yeah,
they took it
man.
all a whole lot
Say
more
it.
seriously and more
Yeah.
intensely and that kind of stuff. And
I don't know if
this
that's
is
a
who
compliment.
I don't know either. It's so hard. It's like so hard to parse
Zeta.
through.
What's good? Zeta was one of mine. So was Jane. What's up, y'all? Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
all the feels.
Yeah.
So they're going to publicly stone you for all the poor things that you did tonight.
Mark.
Okay?
Mark was
Look
the
at
sound
how
man. Mark, we
badly
had
this is
about
going.
Mark Snyder was a sound guy.
Oh,
Me and
yeah.
Mark used to do the JPR. He was, man, that was my guy. What's up, Mark? Sorry, go ahead.
That was Mark and Lauren that offered me a place to crash in
Yeah.
Knoxville. I'm going out to see my
Oh
dad.
my gosh, yeah.
Yep. So what was that like? So discipleship stuff, was that big to you before you came to IHOP?
Yeah, I think that's like a current that's been in me because I think even when I was doing like college stuff, I was pretty much on leadership in college too.
Yeah.
When I was doing like I don't even remember what the name of it was, but like we had a campus chapter, whatever.
Yeah.
So I do think that I just had this like drive to like know truth and talk about it. If there was something really good or like life-giving or exciting, I wanted people to know about it. I wanted people to be in on it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that kind of put me into a lot of leadership positions because I think it was just maybe infectious or something like that. But I think that sincerity kind of just has stayed with me, which I'm really, really glad for. And so I think it shows up no matter where I'm at. So I think that that's probably why um, I might have been in these like sort of leadership positions. I think, yeah,
That's such a
leadership wasn't new.
the thread, like just highlighting one of the things you said there of the thread of like yourself of sincerity, like staying true. It's been one of like the most profound things like in helping me process my time in Kansas City
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
seeing those characteristics of
Yeah.
sincerity or this genuine reach in my heart for good or knowing those commitments that we made. Lord, I remember, and I hate to admit this, but it was Dave Sliker who got me to kind of like say this all the time, but it was that it's like I want to be a faithful witness of Jesus and say whatever, and I want to have a burning heart. Like that was like one of the things that
Mhm.
Dave talked about for himself, and I took it and owned it for myself. I was like, I want to keep my
Mhm.
heart alive, and I want to be a faithful witness. And although that language and maybe motivation behind it and all that stuff has evolved, like that core part of my personality and who I am as a
Mhm.
person and my drive is still there. And I see that
Mhm.
with you um, as far as like the things that you give yourself to now, whether it be like your coaching and consulting stuff that you're doing, or whether it just be mentoring. I mean, that's still part of your drive, and
Mhm.
seeing that I think gives me courage, and I hope gives other people courage to be able to see that because we have lots of conversations about feeling like we lose ourselves or that we don't know who
Mhm.
we are and things like that. And that's
Mhm.
just been like a good anchor point for me.
Mhm. Mhm. That's so good, B. Yeah, I definitely feel like part of the way forward was like getting to the place where I think I had given so much of a false sense of myself, a false self to whatever it is, Christianity was asking of me. I was giving so much of it to myself that it laid me out. I mean, it dropped me, right?
Yeah.
And so the cool thing has been like seeing if there is like actually life after death, it's like happening right now in this
Mm.
frame, in my authentic self. Like, so in a way, it does feel like a death and a life again. I definitely feel like I gave as much as I could, but when inauthenticity just became too much, it like took me out. So all that was left was me. So it's just like I'm either gonna live or not. And so I just
Yeah.
decided to live. And I think it cost me, but I think what I realized is like, yes, it cost me, but also it cost me on the other side too, trying to perform and like trying to be all these things that this so-called Jesus that I was being taught was asking of me. It killed me. And so I think that that gives me a lot more confidence because it's like, oh, I put the pedal to the metal with this Jesus. It's not like a walking away. It's like actually you burned it out. Like that's how intense I felt about it at that point in my life. And so I think it gives me a sense in which I don't actually care what people might have to say now on this side of it because it's like, no,
Yeah.
I did that with all my heart. Like you give yourself to it and the thing ran out before you did. And there's nothing I can do about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was always so hard for me because I felt like I think we all end up hitting that wall at some point that
Mhm.
you're talking about, that death.
Yeah.
I think it's part of processing it all. I think you kinda have to get to the end of it to realize that it's hurting you.
Mhm.
Um, but I think the hard part for me was still hearing those voices of leaders in my head, um,
Mhm.
saying zeal can carry you for 10 years.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like youthfulness will carry you for 10 years. It'll carry you a decade. And
Yeah.
so what that ends up doing is turning it inward and it turns into self-hatred is like what ends up happening.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can't turn anything into anything else.
Yeah.
Like it's not designed to give you life. It's designed to keep itself alive.
Yeah.
I really love where this conversation is going. After IHOP, so I left, right, and then immediately joined another cult, and then I joined that fell apart, and then because I was still looking for the same thing, right? I was looking for like I carried the sincerity out with me, but then I didn't know where to
Mhm.
put it, and I was trying to find
Indeed.
like a I think what I was trying to do was find like a body for it, right? Because
Mhm.
I didn't know how to carry the sincerity in myself
Mhm.
as my authentic self, right?
Mhm.
And so it's like I was looking for something external to plug it into that made it make sense.
Yeah.
And then I left that, and second cult didn't work out. Nearly killed us. It's crazy how cults don't work out. And I went to another church, and there were a lot of really sincere people in that church. The pastor was a really good guy, but he carried that same almost like a wound from it, and it was from IHOP of
Mhm.
here's who you are, right? And he was trying to
Mhm.
put his sincerity into that
Yeah.
picture of that they'd given to him that wasn't
Yeah.
actually who he was.
Mhm.
And I remember this church died. I mean, it died a horrible death. It was traumatic and it was horrible. And I remember sitting there in my basement crying with my guitar and going, I don't want this to die, but I knew it was going to die. And then having this sense of like, why am I so afraid of death?
Mhm.
If I really believe in something
Mhm.
that is built on the idea that we have to die for something beautiful to happen.
Mhm.
And that was like this moment where I was like, I'm not afraid anymore of dying.
Mhm.
I'm just going to let it die.
Mhm.
And it took a long time. It took maybe another 5 years for a lot of that to
Mhm.
die. Um, and some of it was even dreams dying, like false ideas of who I was.
Mhm.
But then, like you said, like what was left was myself. And then I could finally like seat that sincerity and that desire in the right place and embody it. And that felt right. And it's only just recently that I've been able to do that, but it finally felt right.
Mhm.
So I love
Yeah,
what you're
that was
saying.
poetic.
Yeah,
That was like poetry. Good. Good.
I'm glad we're
Oh,
recording.
amen. Let's stand.
It's
Lord.
and that's the thing, and I know, like, I mean, I know both of you pretty well, but like, regardless where our spiritual journeys have taken us over the years, like that's been one of the grounding themes. Like through like all the shaking of my faith and sifting through stuff, it was God as creator that stabilized me. But that idea of death and resurrection, like I just see it over and over and over all the time, like in my life. And it's so shocking what happens when we choose to let go of things and let go and let God. Like whenever we do that, like it's amazing because like and none of us can truly describe it or articulate it, but it's like magic happens and new life happens and it comes, and whether it's healing in our lives or um, new relationships or opportunity, like whatever it might be, like that's like one thing one of the few things that I'm convinced of. Like when we let things die, there can be resurrection if we let it. Like there will be. Um, that's probably the most spiritual I've gotten in 10 intros, but
I mean, it's true though, but I mean, it's literally only one way to find out. So
yeah,
you can either risk like being a zombie, or you could risk finding out whether there's life after death. But either way, there is death involved, right?
yeah,
Um, so I think people just have decision. They may have to make their own decision about that, you know.
yeah. And I know that's like a huge part of your journey. Like obviously you wrote a whole book that like, the trying
I
to
don't know about a whole book, Jack. It's 188 pages.
a good chunk of it. Um just about like really like finding yourself again, like that's a big part of so your book Life After 11, like you're addressing the topics of, it's going to be a taboo word for some people, I know, but talking about whiteness and how it presents itself and how you ran into white Jesus and had to find black Jesus again, for lack of a better term. Like that's what ended up having to happen for you to find like safety again.
Mhm.
um what what was it like at IHOP? Because I mean, even like the AAFA stuff was like part of like what brought you in.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and I don't think we've had conversations previous weeks that you've not seen that. We don't. It doesn't find. I don't find it surprising when someone like you, a person of color, says that they ended up getting stuck in the sound booth. Like
Mhm.
that doesn't make me go, oh wow, why would they do that? Like I've just heard that story too many times at this point of a person
Yeah.
of color getting stuck somewhere off stage.
Yeah.
And but like what was it like living that? Like how did it like
Um,
when did you start to see that it was harming you?
well, there's a couple things. I wouldn't say that I like first I wouldn't say that I like found black Jesus. I think I recovered my
Thank you.
blackness,
Yeah.
and in that reconnected with the things that I had initially loved about Jesus without the
Yeah.
whiteness.
Yes, yes.
And so the way that I think about whiteness is just like the book is called Faith Unleavened, and it's just talking about how whiteness or the whiteness is really just a technology that says that our country, and so therefore all the institutions in our country, are infiltrated by white supremacy, or the idea that white is best and right and standard. And so when that plays into your theology, it functions like an invisible agent that gives rise to bread. And so it's subtle, it's pervasive, it is not in your face, and it's something that animates, but that you can't grab a hold of, right? You can see the way it animates things, but it's not like you could get it in your hand.
Yeah.
So to clear that, but
It's
then
not
I
something you
think
can
of
grab and put in a jar. Can't do that.
exactly. There's no way to exactly. It's like leaven. And so I think the AAFA stuff was initially really exciting to me because it actually allowed, at least I thought, was going to allow for me to recover some of the blackness that I think was either erased or pushed to the side after I met White Jesus when I was 17, right? So like I didn't immediately go to IHOP until I was in my 20s, but my experience in evangelicalism from the time, I accepted Jesus into my heart was very much about it was very much about like not putting anything before Jesus, not making an idol out of your blackness, not uh, not making blackness a thing that would separate you from Christ. And so, but no one was asking those questions of white people.
I was just gonna say, I've never in my life had somebody sit there and be like, "Don't make whiteness an idol." Like that'd be a weird ass thing to say. But then, and so just by it's just I mean that's just insane. Like I'm just having a bit of a minute because like that would be so weird if I was just sitting there. Yeah, yeah. Like if I'm just sitting there being like a white person and they're like, "Hey, don't make your whiteness an idol," as if me just existing because as a white person. Like what the There's a lot of cuss words. I'm sorry, I didn't know this aspect of it.
You avoided the sailor jar. Where's Ben? He's supposed to be keeping count.
I don't know where he is, but I guess I don't swear if Ben's not on. So whatever. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Actually, though, Susan, I think that's what the point I'm trying to make is that like whiteness is not an idol, it is God, because an idol is something that you would dare to exalt to the level of God. And so the only thing that makes me not white is my blackness. So that's why the only conversation that's a conversation that I had to have that you didn't have to have, because what would be the point of having that conversation? Right. It's very interesting when you think about how embedded it all is.
No, that's and yeah, I mean, just the fact, like you're saying, like white is the standard. I remember thinking, I had a friend in high school, and she was saying, I don't remember what she said, but I was like, no, I'm just regular, I'm normal, and she was like, no, you're white. And I did not, like, it took me a minute to be like, I consider myself to be nothing, which means I consider myself to be the standard instead of, and I did not know that. Like, I did not know that. So I'm just having a real time reaction for you.
It's all good. Like, I feel like I've had so many, because I mean, me and B have had these conversations too. And it's like, I think what's so interesting to me is like the fact that like whiteness is not even a thing. It's not an ethnic identity. So it's a technology, and I think
white skin necessarily. Like
it doesn't. And that's what I feel like is the issue, is like that there is something more for even people who have been raised white. Like that whiteness robs people of even having their own rootedness. People who are European descendants, they don't have a rootedness in anything, which is why talking about whiteness or talking about race is so scary, because you're shaking the foundation of someone's identity, and no one's really had to think about what it means to be white. It just means that a bunch of Europeans got put into the same box to set themselves against another group of people. But before they got here, they were French, Irish, Scottish, like, and they became white. They weren't born white. And Jesus became white,
And talk a little bit more, if you can, for me about, as I love the way you're using the term technology, but I would love to hear you unpack it more.
Yeah, I think it's when I use it as when I say whiteness is technology, it's something that we use. It's an ideology, or it's something that we use to navigate society, right? So it helps
Can I ask you a question as you say that?
Yeah.
Just to help people kind of understand this idea. Have you ever used whiteness to your advantage?
Me?
Yes.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So like that's a thing that I don't think people understand, that like some people are familiar with like code switching and things like that.
Yeah.
But like all of us, even myself, I was having a conversation with my wife tonight, talking about how I address certain older men at certain points in my life. Is like it's whiteness is what it is. It's appealing to the power because I know that it can give me something in return.
Mhm.
Mhm.
That's why I
It's
asked that.
very
Sorry, go
true.
ahead. So keep explaining technology.
No,
Sorry.
no. I mean, I think you learn how to navigate it, which is why you only have a few. If you think about people of color in like largely white ministries, they all have a certain way about them because
Yeah.
you learn how to navigate whiteness because it's a technology. You can become savvy at it and not be white skinned, right? Like
Yeah.
that, whiteness is not, again, it's not an ethnicity. It's a technology. It's a way to navigate society. And so if you can befriend it, if you can learn it, if you can utilize it, then you can pretty much experience success in a country that was built off of it. Right. And to the degree that you push back against it is to the degree that you experience the consequences of that. Right. Yeah. Yeah, Allie. So I think using whiteness to my advantage looks like knowing that a certain word I might use or a certain phrase I might use. I know that if I'm in a room, particularly me as a Black woman having to navigate ministry, which pushed me in the room with a lot of patriarchy and white supremacy a lot of
Had lots
times.
of
And
conversations
so,
about patriarchy.
yes, but like as me and B talked about before, I got to be a leader. Just because I learned how to navigate whiteness, baby. I know what you want to hear. I know how you want to hear it. I know I can't be super loud and I got to be cool and I got to make friends with the white guy in here with power, right? If I want to pay for my kids to have diapers. So yeah, I mean, we everybody plays with whiteness. Everybody navigates it. But at some point, it just takes a toll on you because it's fool's gold. It doesn't actually it's not worth what you receive return. And at some point, you just have to be like, well, I'm just done playing the game. But like, you're not going to escape it, but you don't have to like. I don't, the whole idea of like you can't worship God and mammon, right?
Mm.
So I think you can tell when people there are Black people out here making real money because they know how to navigate whiteness and they won't call it what it is. Not because they don't know it's there, but because being a certain way about it, there are consequences for that. Right?
This just brought this totally random pop culture thing to my head just because I just saw it on social media a minute ago. So did Beyonce really release a country song?
Yeah.
I saw
A
something like
couple.
Dolly. I
She got a
did
whole
not
album
know
coming
that.
out.
I saw a statement from Dolly talking about Beyonce, and I'm like, and
Dolly.
that's someone right there using like shit,
Jolene.
and if anything, she's using it to her advantage, and she's showing everybody she
Black people
can't
love
be messed
Jolene.
with.
I hope
She's-
Beyonce just takes over country too, and it's just
be
like, yep, I did it, and I would just like
Where's my
then I would
Grammy?
listen to country, like then I would
Yeah.
listen. I would just be like,
Yeah.
all right, now I'm here.
Yeah, it's a couple of them are bops.
So sorry, let me get us back on track. So like, when did it might not be directly tied to whiteness. Did you have that language a whole lot at IHOP? Like, were you able to begin identifying that? No, I didn't think so.
No, I mean, I think what happened at IHOP was, it was a couple things in succession. In 08. Yeah, right. Like,
Thank you, Allie.
come on,
Thank
Allie.
you. Educate
I was
me.
like, somebody got it. I was waiting for you to do it. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so in 08, after Obama was elected and we had that solemn assembly. Do you remember that?
I love that you had to have. So I went there in 08, but I love that there had to be a solemn assembly because Obama got elected.
Indeed.
All right, calm down.
My grandmother called me while I was in the solemn assembly, and something about that experience was like, I think something or somebody, I don't remember if I wrote it or somebody said it to me or something, but like it poked a hole in kind of the silo I was in, because like on the phone with my grandmother, my family is like exuberant. A Black man just became president, and in here is a whole bunch of white people crying out to Jesus because it's the sign of the times and mourning. And so for the first time, it hit me that like, oh wait, so Black progress is causing y'all to have a solemn assembly, like especially seeing who y'all voted for in 2016. You know what I'm saying? Like, it can't be that serious. So like, but like, I remember that was the first time of like, wow, I'm really disconnected. Something is not right here. And obviously it didn't feel right for people to be so vehement about Obama. Because the prayers for the Black community were always very peppered, if you will, with caricature. And so I remember thinking like, it doesn't seem like it's that bad, but being in that room and talking to my grandmother, it was like very like, okay, kind of wobbly. And then 4 years later, Trayvon Martin was killed. And I remember the way it broke me. And I remember how nobody at IHOP was talking about it, but they kept saying they were friends with Jesus and that they heard the heartbeat of Jesus and that Jesus was the bridegroom and that they felt what he felt and they fasted and nobody cared about Trayvon. Nobody even knew his name. And so it became like, well, if none of y'all, nobody in this whole wide mission space, and that was like 2012. So the first Exodus hadn't really happened yet. So it was lit out there. It was right after the awakening. So nobody in this whole space, we're hearing the heartbeat of Jesus, and Jesus isn't talking to anybody here about this 17-year-old boy who was murdered carrying some Skittles. And it hit me like, okay, something is just not right. Like it was just like, does Jesus not care? Like, so time went on. And then, after that, there was a slew of stuff. And then Bethany Deaton happened. So then there was Trayvon, there was Obama, and then Trayvon, and then Bethany. And Bethany was an intern in the first one I did, the first one I led, Bethany and Tyler. And so knowing them and seeing how they were handling it from the stage and being like, y'all talked about the Sermon on the Mount and about laying down your lives for Jesus and like how at the end times you were going to be these messengers that never faltered and never wavered. And you are up here lying. Y'all are lying through your teeth. Like it was such a like, what is this? Like, so I moved to Atlanta very shortly after that. I was like, God, get the hell out of Dodge. I can't do this. Like something is wrong. But I still then had to like pick up all these pieces, right? Because I felt like if you're doing IHOP, you're doing the thing extreme. Like how much more radical can you get than night and day prayer?
Yeah.
So like, so if the radical people are not even able to care about certain things, can't see certain things, and I mean, say racist things at the end of the day. And then on top of that, they say that they want us to be like Jesus and they want us to do the Sermon on the Mount, but none of them are doing it. They don't believe this. Mm-hmm. So I felt like from probably 2013 to 2015 or so, like I was just in a massive depression, didn't know what I believed, was drunk all the time. And just, what do you do? Like, how do you recover from IHOP? But I did somehow.
How did you get out? Like, how did you just save up money or like family help you? Like how'd you get out?
I got hired. Because again, like I was doing the AFA thing. So when I got hired to work with Black students in Atlanta, I was able to raise support fast, right? Because it's charity for Black people, and Tamise did the Black prayer meetings. So I was able to get like funded out. Some people sent me out there. And I went with my friends. We drove down, moved in. It was a whole thing. Yeah.
So I'm curious. So, like, because it sounds like to me what you're saying is, you were talking about that sincerity piece, right? And it's like the sincerity like carried you out of there. Is kind of what you were saying. Like there was a death that happened, but that death was like the thing that actually brought about that death was almost like a betrayal of that same sincerity. Like you were looking for it in other people, right? You were looking for it in those people and you expected to find it and it wasn't there. And that, like, does that sound right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I think you're right. Like, yeah, I think, I don't know. Somebody said something last night about this. Oh, it was somebody that I knew because I even did IHOP. Oh, that's what I forgot to tell you. I did IHOP Atlanta because I was like, I got to find some way to make sense of myself.
So
I
you hung
moved
with
down to
Billy.
Atlanta. I hung with Billy for a couple years. Yeah.
Okay. Billy was my internship co-leader.
Ooh.
Billy prophesied I was the next Misty Edwards.
Oh my gosh.
Appreciate you, Billy.
When I moved to Atlanta, listen, I ain't gonna say no names, but every Black person that moved from Kansas City to IHOP Atlanta got the same prophecy. We got pulled into a side room.
It
We
wasn't
got
Mike
the
with an
same
afro, was
prophecy.
it?
No, but it was about God raising up Black people and sending you down like an arrow to come help us with all the basically, you're gonna lead the Black initiatives essentially, because y'all in Atlanta, it don't make no sense for y'all to be here and nobody in here is Black.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So we all got the same prophecy, and I mean it was cool. I made some great friends, and there were a lot more Black people in IHOP Atlanta. Let's just be real, but like I felt like. Yeah, at some point it just was like I'm trying to validate something, and I don't really believe any of this anymore.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm. It's fun to like to hear you retell these because I've heard it, you know, a handful of times. But I love picking out. I keep obsessing over these details that I don't know. So Susan, like if you have something you want to know, like jump in. Cause I'm like, how'd you get out?
No, I'm just enjoying. I'm just really enjoying. And then every once in a while, I want to unpack something because to
you
me,
pop in
says
with
like
that poetry.
like when did like because for me, we were talking about this earlier too about the death, like the slow death, and I remember I think it was probably for like probably a year or so after IHOP, I still tried to do weekly prayer meetings, like wherever I landed, you know,
Hmm.
and I can't remember what made me give that up. It might have been a change of scenery, like ended up moving again and stuff, and maybe that's what like let me finally let it go. I ended up going. I was part of a Southern Baptist church plant for 2 years,
Yeah.
which is a whole other story in itself. But obviously, we weren't doing a whole lot of charismatic stuff there, and so I was able to let go of that. But like, you stayed in proximity to that place there, and so it wasn't like you didn't have nobody around you doing the same stuff. Like, how did you begin, like, I guess, for lack of a better term, like detangling that crap from your
Is it?
spirituality?
Well, I mean, I had a physical reaction. I mean, I remember where I was at. I was in IHOP Atlanta's prayer room, and there was a message being preached, and I remember thinking, I don't believe this. I don't believe this. And I started having hives, and itching, and having
Wow.
panic attacks in the prayer room. And I stopped being able to go. And it felt like I had given so much in Kansas City of myself that I needed to prove that it was worth something. And so I could not like separate myself from the house of prayer at first because it felt like I gave so much. It has to count for something. So I mean, I was doing devos there. I was working. So people that are from Atlanta, like the House of Prayer at that time was in Lawrenceville, but I was working at Emory and the AUC, which was in the west end of Atlanta, and then Emory is in like Decatur, and Lawrenceville is way the other direction. I bought a house closer to Lawrenceville, even though I was working down in the city, closer to the city, because I was like, I have to prove that I didn't waste my life. Like, it can't be true that I just wasted my life. And then I think what started happening was like physically, I could not bear. Like, I could not bear to be in there. I could not breathe, which is interesting because that was like the mantra, right, on the streets for Black bodies, right? But I couldn't breathe in the prayer room. And I just was like, had to be done. So I went to therapy because I felt like I have to figure out, like, am I having a nervous breakdown? Like, I don't, I mean, I just felt like something is wrong. And that's when they were like, have you ever heard of religious trauma? And I was like, nope. Learned about religious trauma, started reading these books. And that's kind of what
You hit the
got me out because I
jackpot
realized,
then. I had to go
Yeah,
through
like
like 5 therapists before anybody, like, could say
ooh.
church could be harmful.
Mhm. I mean, yeah, it was
Um,
great. My therapist had done their thesis on it. So it was
Wow.
like they were like, "Oh, that's what's going on right now. That's what's happening." It was great. It was really great.
Bring up Nicole's she was talking about she's been having hives and panic attacks and stuff. How did you recover?
Yeah, you gotta go see a therapist, sis. You really do, because you're gonna have to learn how to. First of all, okay, so this is what the therapist told me, which was so helpful, and for anybody else that needs this, oh, it was so helpful. So sometimes what the therapist told me was that like when you're in a cult and when you're in a high control space, that especially is a spiritual type of high control space, your brain has created neural pathways, right? And so trying to like get out a lot of the times is going to be very hard to do mentally. Can y'all see me?
Your
mm,
video froze.
Yeah, of course
I
it
can
did.
still hear you though.
Anyway, I'm gonna say this anyway because somebody gonna get this. Um, but your brain creates these neural pathways, and so getting out of those mental spaces is going to take the longest, and it's the hardest to do. And so what happens is the divine God, the spirit. I don't know how you all are kind of relating to God these days, but we'll talk to you in your body because you cannot trust your mind. And so what I did was I followed my body's lead for about 8 months.
mm.
Mm.
Talk to me about, like, tell me what that looked like for you, like when you say that.
Really, like if I couldn't bear to be there, I left. I was so one example is like I was asked to speak at a conference that was kind of adjacent to the House of Prayer. And I mean, I was a core leader, you know, so I could give them little joints with the little notes and stuff. And so I was just going to preach and got out of the car and started having the attack to the point where I could not walk. Um, and I was just like, the thing that my therapist told me popped back in my head. And I was like, oh, this is my body telling me, do not do this because my body is
Mm,
trying to keep me safe.
yeah.
And so I just wouldn't go if I felt any of that. And it got to the point where all I could literally do was take communion. That's literally all I could do. That was all my body would let me do. And I think that's
Mm,
because that's the first thing I did. And I did that before I met white Jesus. So it was like safe in a way.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, like so I would say to y'all that are experiencing these physical things, your body you are exiting a high control cult situation, and that is absolutely normal. So get a therapist, number one, and number two, can you trust that maybe God or however you're referring to that right now is speaking to you in a place different from your mind because of the things that have happened in your mind. Your mind is just not a safe place right now, and that's okay. What's up? Is that Amber? Like my Amber from my internship? Anyway,
It's
I
the
have
best,
her name
Amber.
Amber.
I was talking to her the other day.
Oh my gosh. Man, I had an Amber in I called my first intern group my little lovelies. I dedicated the book to them, actually, all my interns.
Mm,
Did you
Oh,
know that, B?
I didn't realize that. No,
Yeah. Yeah, all my students and all my interns. Yeah.
that's sweet.
Yeah.
Phew.
Yeah.
You're giving me flashbacks. Like whenever I like, because obviously I talked about being disabled earlier. If you weren't here
Mhm.
for 2 years, and so I definitely felt crap in my body.
Mhm.
But one of the things that's just coming back to me I hadn't thought about really in about a year or so probably is I got sick in I think it was May of 2017, so the same year our youngest daughter was born. And the conversation we had just got on vacation to Baltimore, me and my wife and our oldest at the time, and went to go see some baseball games and stuff. And we were finally like financially doing okay. Like we had pulled
Mhm.
our we'd had to file bankruptcy, pulled ourselves up out of the pit, and was about to get our own place again. We'd been living with my
Mhm.
mom, we were going through all that.
Mhm.
And and on the drive home from Baltimore, me and my wife had a conversation, and And I told her, I was like, I think I'm ready to do ministry again. I was like, I
Mhm.
miss leading people. That's what I said.
Mhm.
And I'd gotten a text message. I mean, honestly, it was a heartfelt message from a guy in our church in uh, Texas who had dementia,
Mhm.
and he's still around. But his memory's gone. Like he doesn't remember a whole lot. And Al messaged me, and he was talking about how he'd heard a song on the radio and how it reminded him of me, and he was
Mm.
saying that I'd had a huge impact on his life. And something, 80-year-old, 70-year-old man, I think he's in his 70s probably.
Mm.
Um, and it just meant a lot to me. But we had that conversation. I was like, I'm ready to do this again. I want to do this again. Literally 2 days later, I'm on my back.
Mm.
Um, it's just crazy, like our bodies really do, and that's whenever, like how I got out of it, like, honestly, I think was, like, listening to my body, I think was a
Mhm.
big part of it. But we had to quit
Mhm.
everything for a couple years too, like, just had to, I mean, part of it wasn't a choice, just holed up in my bedroom in the bed half the time,
Yeah.
uh, man, it's intense.
Mhm.
You know,
I
bring up
think
loss,
it's
unless y'all wanna talk about this some more, you can go for it.
no. I mean, I think you should throw down that list, that link. I mean, for people to come on for sure one more time. But I was gonna
Okay.
say, you were talking about all you could do is take communion,
Mhm.
and so to me, you and I haven't met. I've said this on here before, but I'm in a space where I recently admitted to somebody that I'm actually in a space where I've figured out what I believe about God. I've figured out a lot of things. I'm gonna be vulnerable on here. Um, I've known for a long time what I believe about God,
Mm.
but didn't say it because after that death, right?
Mhm.
If you start stepping back into new life, if you start to live again, you can't take it back. You can't, because if there's some kind of second death, that would
Mm.
be horrible, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And you don't want to die a second time. And so
Mm.
it's really scary to start to live again. And so, right,
Mhm.
like I figured out my beliefs, but the thing that haven't done is like slot God back in, right?
Mhm.
I left it
Mhm.
alone because that was a huge grief. Like I loved God,
Mhm.
right? I
Mhm.
and I think we were joking last week where I said, I think I'm ready to love again, maybe.
Mhm.
And which is a whole thing.
Yeah.
And you reminded me you were talking about communion. And I think it's first of all, it's interesting to me that you talk about communion because like communion's all about being embodied again, right?
Yeah.
And I think it was Alyssa DeGraff the other week who said something about like feeling like she was stepping back into her own skin. And I'm not like trying to put words in her mouth and say that that related to faith because I don't think that's what she was saying. But that sentiment really struck me of like that moment of stepping back into your own skin. Because I think like the trauma of all this is it takes us out of who we are and out of something
Mhm.
that we love and this place that I'm going to go back to like the
Mhm.
sincerity piece. Like I think
Mhm.
what hurt about all of this for me, right, was that
Mhm.
I was so fucking sincere.
Mhm.
Mm.
I
Yep.
loved God and I loved people and
Mhm.
I believed in all of it so much.
Mhm.
I believed in the goodness of it. And when that betrayal happened for me, you
Mhm.
know, happened in a different way than I think it did for you. But but it it tore that sincere part of me in half. Like it just felt like I was ripped apart.
Mhm.
And I didn't have a place to put that sincerity anymore because the thing that I had seeded it inside, right?
Mhm.
I realized was toxic and destroying it. Like to stay in that place would destroy not just who I was, but everything I loved, everything I believed in, everyone I loved. It really,
Mhm.
it couldn't save anything. It could only
Mhm.
consume it, right? That's
Mhm.
what I felt like. It was not just IHOP, but like that culture of church, right? It would just consume all of it. And then it almost felt insulting to have to die on top of that because it took everything. And that was just salt on a wound that I couldn't get over for years. And because it was like, how dare you take it all and then kill me too when I tried to serve you. And the one thing that I could do is, and I love that you were talking about communion. Was it for you? For me, it was the Lord's Prayer. That was the only thing I could pray. I had been taught all these prayers, right? It's all about pray this and pray that and pray, rooted and grounded in love and all these verses and all these specific prayers. I remember at one point I cussed somebody out. My daughter had Tourette's. And somebody said to me, "Do you think it's a demon?" And I said, if it's a demon and Jesus can wave his fucking magic Jesus wand and cast it out, then he can go ahead. But if I have to pray some perfect prayer for him to do that, then I'm out, because what kind of loving person would make me pray that certain thing when he could just do it? That makes no sense, right? And I didn't at that point, like, because I had to let my faith really die, like actually just die and be done for a bit. But before I did that, the only thing I could pray was the Lord's Prayer. And I had to believe that it just was enough, right? And I don't know why it was that, and I don't know why this reminded me of that, but it was just like, that was my thing that I could cling to. Maybe it was like that was the one, maybe I could find the sincerity in it. I don't know what it was. Actually, you know what? I think I do know what it was. I think that it was when I looked at Jesus as a person, I could see that he was trying to give some kind of gift. And so I thought maybe I could rest the sincerity in that for a minute while I figured out where to go next. I think that's what that was. Like, it was like, okay, it's going to be safe there.
Yo, did you know? I'm trying to see if I have it. Oh, I don't have it. You got to get this book, Susan. It's called Prayers of the Cosmos. And it is the actual Aramaic translation of the Lord's Prayer. And when you read what Jesus is like actually saying, yo, bruh, when you read what's actually being said in Aramaic, yeah, I would go there with it.
I'm going to do it.
I would go with it.
I'm going to get the book.
It's by Neil Douglas Klotz. It's called Prayers of the Cosmos, and it's real thin.
Speaking of which, I just put Camisa's book link in the chat for anybody that's interested.
I really like thin books. I've actually committed a lot of my life to writing really thin books as a life.
A whole stack of books.
For it too. You said Neil Douglas.
Yep, Neil Douglas Klotz.
I found the link here for people.
I don't want y'all to see my laundry back there.
Oh, there we go. She beat me too. Thank you.
Can you see it?
I like what.
Yep. Prayers of the Cosmos.
I'm gonna get it.
Can I tell you what it says right quick? Just the beginning.
Read it. Yeah, go for it.
Do it.
Oh my
please.
gosh.
This is the most church we've had in here.
Bruh. All right. O birther, father, mother of the cosmos, you create all that moves in light. O thou, the breathing life of all, creator of the shimmering sound that touches us. Respiration of all worlds, we hear you breathing in and out in silence. Source of sound. In the roar and the whisper, in the breeze and in the whirlwind, we hear your name. Radiant one, you shine within us, outside us, even darkness shines when we remember. Name of names, our small identity unravels in you. You give it back as a lesson. Wordless action, silent potency. where ears and eyes awaken, there heaven comes. O birther, father, mother of the cosmos. That's what's being said in Aramaic. Y'all gotta get that book, yo. Because
For
Aramaic as a
sure.
language, this is the thing. Semitic languages, especially Aramaic, is about breath and vibration. So
Mhm.
when things are being said in Aramaic, what's happening are several things are happening on several different levels. The words themselves carry meaning, the way that you breathe, the way that the vibration of the sounds. And so when you get it in King James or even NIV, like it is so vanilla and flat. And that's what happens when you uproot this stuff. Because if we knew what was being said in Aramaic, we might not have even needed to go to IHOP. Shit. I'm sorry, I know we didn't supposed to cuss.
You're
But
fine.
you know what I mean? I mean, if we really knew, because it was something we wanted something to be extreme and powerful and big and audacious and
Yeah.
kind and all of we wanted that. And turns out it's the NIV that robbed us. That's the gag.
Yep.
Man.
You know, it's funny. When I was at IHOP, I had this dream, right? Where out front of IHOP. So you know that mulch place? There's like a
Yeah.
rock place. Yeah, you know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. All right. So I dreamed that like
Yep.
IHOP was that place, right? And they had like all these rocks out front, and they were like, "These are the best rocks." And there were all these signs, like, "This is the dumbest dream." And there were all these signs like, "These are the best rocks. These are the greatest rocks." And in the dream, they had like everyone else's rocks, and then here's our rocks. And there was like this stream like running down on the rocks. And I look, and I was like, and like IHOP's rocks were like glistening, like they were glinting in the sun. And I was like, yeah, but that's because the water's on your rocks. Like you just poured water on the rocks. Like that's the only difference between these two rocks.
Mhm.
And in the dream, I like climb up the rocks, right? And I'm looking for like what's real. I'm looking for what might be left, like because
Mm.
it's all these like dumb little like fist-sized rocks, right?
Mhm.
And I find this big black. It was like onyx rock, and I
Mhm.
laid down on my back on that rock, and I could feel it like it was alive or something, right? And that rock didn't have water on it or anything like that. It just like was this crazy, mysterious, I don't know. It was like you know what it was? It was like the monolith at the end of 2001 like Space Odyssey. That's like this big vibrating like mystery of the universe thing, right? And I was like, this is the thing. Like whatever this thing is, this is the thing. But it wasn't IHOPs. It was this totally other thing. And I feel like it was like whatever that was, like that's what we were all like craving. And some sort of really like, I keep coming back to the word embodied today, but like some sort of like really grounded foundational thing.
Mhm.
And that's why none of that worked. Like that's why
Mhm.
it hurt so much, because we did the thing, you know, where the guy who goes and sells all he has to get the field with the pearl at great price. I think that's what we all thought we were doing. I think we
Mhm.
were I think we thought it was the pearl at great price, and we sold everything, and it was nothing. It
Yeah.
was just like it was just a bunch of fucking rocks.
See, but I'm like reframing it because I think that there was something. Nobody gets
That's good.
people to stay up in the middle of the night and sing songs when everybody else is asleep unless there is some level of truth, some nugget, even if it's small, of truth or magnetism, or it's almost like somebody you have this like here's this really random, I'm going to ground this in my own work because this is what I've been thinking about lately, so hopefully you go with me. But what happens, I heard about this Irish uh like saint, he's an Irish saint now, that came to America, right? Met with the natives, exchanged, they had some meals, and guess what? This guy went back home to Ireland. And the idea is you could come and take, or you could come and share. And I think what ends up happening with these leaders is they do get a hold of something and they pimp that thing, right?
Mm.
Instead of sharing it,
Yeah.
they make you pay for it. And it's like, it doesn't mean that,
Oof.
like, yeah, we sold our souls for that thing. Of course we did. It's beautiful. It's worth that. The problem is that we believed the person that was telling us how to get it when it was inside of us the whole time. And then you think about all the stuff that Moses is talking about. It is not up so high as to who will go and get it. It's not down as to who will go down and get for us. The word is near you. It is in you that you might do it. And the idea is, if you can convince people that they're sinful and that they're in need of external stuff to save them and make them holy and make them
Yeah.
right and make them worthy of love, you can pimp that people. And that's what happened. We hated ourselves, so we believed Mike.
Mm.
So the only way to get free is to come back to self and be like, ain't nothing wrong with me. Like, I don't have to abdicate my agency. I don't have to give it away. Like, I feel like it's not fair to you or me or anybody else that went out there because we love God. Because we went out there because we loved God. And we believed what too many people told us about ourselves and about God. And now it's time to decide whether we're going to listen to ourselves for once. And I think that's the way I'm redeeming it. Mike Bickle does not own my life in God. Hell no. He does not deserve my life in God. You know what I'm saying? Like, he can kick rocks as far as I'm concerned.
Ugly rocks.
And that takes
Ugly rocks.
and that takes a conscious choice too. Like, that's one of the ways you've impacted me. To me, it's like in my story, I remember very vividly driving down Laskin Road in Virginia Beach, listening to one of your shows on your podcast feed, and you said, you were like, they can take the Bible, they can take this, they can take that, but they can't take Jesus from me.
They sure can.
And that meant so much to me, because at that moment
They tried.
they did, and I couldn't open the Bible. Like, there's still parts of the Bible I can't open to this day, if I'm getting real, because I hear those voices. I hear those men standing on those platforms saying those things that beat me into the dirt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Man, I think for me, and I don't know, I think it might be different because you're a musician, and I've been watching your feed and how you're like singing these other songs, right? That we would have called secular back in the day, which, what is that even? But anyway, like, you're singing these songs because you were made to sing. So it's like there's a way in which I do think that things are like irrevocable, as weird as it is. I do think that. For me, I really loved the Gospels. So I feel like even I still say I'm out here wearing a light jacket called Christianity.
Yeah.
Okay. So like, but what I feel like is I am bumping into the person I saw in those Gospels in every space. I've been everywhere,
Yeah.
and I love it. And some places are more life-giving than others, but I've been all over. Okay. And like, I keep seeing this person there.
Yeah.
So once that's solidified for you, you say what you want about me. Like, like, for real. A person who's died and raised to life again is not afraid of death. They know what happens after. They got to get you to be afraid. Once the fear is the first thing to go. Once you stop being afraid, bruh, they would say it's down here from there, but
you're gonna make me cry if we keep going.
They would like to tell you it's downhill. I'm trying to tell you, bro, there's life after that. I'm telling you, but you gotta die. It's only way to find out. You gotta let it crumble.
I'm gonna pause this for a second because we're past the hour mark by about 15 minutes, and I can tell Susan's about to shoot me.
Sorry.
I told her we'd get on a roll, and this would happen.
My bad, Susan.
I wanted to go through a couple housekeeping things. Oh, she's still muted. She can't find her mute button. I think it's like Command D or something like that. I can't remember. There you go.
Okay,
There
I
you
think
go.
my keyboard was out of batteries. No, I'm good because I had a thought, and then so I'm gonna interrupt you and give my thought, and then you can give
Yeah,
your ground rules and invite everybody.
Do it.
But what were you just saying to me? Is you said something? Oh yeah, but being afraid of death, and you said fear. You were talking about fear. And since I'm being weird and bringing up all my weird ass dreams that I had right before I left IHOP, I'm gonna bring up
Dream the
another dream.
dreamer.
Um, so I had this one dream, right? And in the dream, this is such a weird ass dream. I'm giving birth to tea bags. I don't know why. I worked at Starbucks. Yeah, this is a lot here, um, but I had 4 babies. Okay, 3, 4, I don't know.
Tea babies.
There were tea babies.
Were
I
they
don't know what was happening. Like this
be
one of those
clear.
unhinged dreams. But I remember it actually meant something to me. And the first one was because actually my kids ended up being named after them. Not totally not on purpose. I only realized it after the fact, but I think it just like kind of put something in me. But the first one was I can't remember the name of it, but it was like Passion Zen and something else. I don't know because I worked at Starbucks, but what they actually amounted to was freedom from fear, and then like truth, like speaking truth, and the last one was like sonship, basically, like, but like in the sense of like being really grounded in your own identity. And it was really, I mean, that was one of the last things. There were a couple like really poignant last things that shaped who I became post IHOP, even while my faith was totally dying. I mean, just like slow, painful, horrific, grieving death, right? But those were things that shaped me, which goes back again to the sincerity, but it's like the freedom from fear. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be what I am, who I am in front of people, and not worry about it, because otherwise you're dying the whole time, you know? And then actually being passionate, actually instead of tamping down my passions and the things that I care about. And I don't mean just like your dreams or whatever, like music is a passion, sure. But I mean like justice. I mean like loving people well and going out of your way and going, you know what, I'm going to put my body in front of this truck for you or whatever it is, like whatever hard thing you're having happen. I'm going to put myself on the line. And then knowing who the last one, and this is someone who's in a intentionally agnostic space because I'm a chicken and I don't feel like re-engaging God in any meaningful way right now.
That's real.
I'm gonna own it. Like, you know, that what I feel like I'm like betraying half the people here because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm the resident agnostic, and then I was like, oh, I'm reconsidering having faith. Sorry, it is where I'm at, and I'm not gonna pretend.
Everybody's agnostic at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, like, but
nobody knows.
You know, it's like that last bit of like, I remember my husband once said he did a sermon one time before they decided he was too liberal for them. And he was talking about being an heir, like being a son instead of a slave or something like that. And he was like, a son is somebody who knows who their father is, but lives it out of their own volition. Like their DNA is there, but they're living it out of who they are, they're not looking for instructions. It's like this authentic, almost like intuitive existence, right? Yeah. And that really hit me because I was like, it's like you intuitively know because of who you are like this is right or this is wrong or we need to do something. And I think that brought me back. I think that is one of the things that brought me back to life. That's been bringing me back to life a little bit, is living out of that. And that, again, goes back to embodiment. Like you're living the DNA of who you really are at your core, intuitively listening. You know, I think that, and that's so healing and grounding again, gets you out of that space where the tapes of the voices of Mike or like whoever else are telling you who you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to be doing it.
It's good.
Whew. Well, I'm gonna bring them on here. We got Rubio Time Flies. What's up, dude?
Rubio.
He's bringing us a cathartic enjoyment. Right?
Let's bring on another white guy here. Here is our correspondent, Rubio, the white guy with mustache. What do you have to add to the conversation?
You know what? It was bringing me some zen. You know, I was feeling it in my soul. Oh, Allie loves me and she came to visit.
That's the homie right there.
What happens if we do this number? Oh, that's a little bit better. Has anybody got problems with that? Little square heads.
That's good. If one more person will join us, we'll be even.
We'll be even.
You'll do my OCD a favor.
Let me go through the stuff I want to hit on.
Even with the atheistic Gnostics, are we leveling the playing field?
Thanks, Joe, for coming to represent. Appreciate it.
Just representing.
Hey, Philip, I see you joining on here, but it's saying your device isn't connected. I'm not sure what's going on, but it won't let me add you in, even with audio. So that's why I kicked you a second ago, just so you know.
Lucas, yes, that is a fly fishing fly. This
Let's
is how
see
we
here.
zen. His Rubio comes into this now.
Oh, hey.
So
I'm
that's
on
the link here.
Correct.
You guys want to join?
I looked up and I surprised myself. I'm on here. Oh my god.
This is my.
Oh, you didn't know you were on, Allie?
No, I
This whole
was
time.
just fiddling with my stuff and then I look up at the screen and I was like, why am I up on the screen already?
That is so great.
Little
So IHOP
useful
KC.
pieces of art. Oh,
IHOP
sorry.
No,
Yeah.
you're good. Let me get through this and then we'll goof off.
Get through your thing.
So IHOP KC Stories, you guys know about it.org. You can submit your stories to share anonymously there on that platform. Also, this past 2 weeks or so, started an IHOP KC Stories Facebook page. If you go to that page, one of the things that they're trying to do with that is whenever news articles are released concerning all the current stuff or in any important tidbits that want to be shared, trying to make it's not even really in the stories genre, if we're being honest at this point, but it's something that all you guys know, that to where you guys can come to and see and hopefully be able to stay up to date with everything that's going on, all the TRR articles and all that kind of stuff. Alyssa last week talked to everyone about the reporting system that her and Caleb Ponte set up. That's at reportihopkc.org, and they're inviting pretty much anyone who experienced abuse at IHOP KC to make a report there. You could reach out to Alyssa DeGraff on Facebook or social media if you have any questions about that. I don't think I have an email or anything for her.
No, just get her on Twitter. She's Alyssa DeGraff. And if you do like a hashtag CVS girl, she'll probably pop right up.
She'll probably pop.
So, yeah.
And then the last thing I wanted to bring to everybody's attention, if you haven't done this, I imagine by this point, most people who are hanging out here have done this. If you've not signed the petition that was released way long ago, I want to encourage you to do that. That's a petition asking for an unbiased third party. But the primary reason I'm going to ask you to sign it if you haven't is so that you can stay updated on big developments and stuff like that happens. Anytime that happens, Susan or someone else sends out an update to that mailing list of it's almost 4,500 people now of who have signed it, just to keep everyone aware of the big things that are happening. So those are ways that you can stay connected to broader advocacy conversations and things like that right now. Anything there that anybody felt like I missed that we should bring up?
I just wanted to bring up how you left for 4 weeks and then came back, and then you were like, here's an intro and also an intermission, and how I just felt like that was like a power move.
I think what you're trying to say
Intended.
is thank you, Brantley.
I don't know. It's like close to that, but it's like with a little bit of suspicion. Like, it's like, are you like, Allie, do you feel a little betrayed? Because I do. Like, you know?
I don't know. Betrayal is a strong word. I kind
It's
of feel shown up, maybe.
okay.
Like,
Okay.
or maybe
Yeah.
like it's like I'm glad to see the show leveling up. Yet at the same time, it's like, why didn't we have the intro
Mm.
before?
I feel like it was like he was holding back. Like he was like, oh, remember,
It's
I have
almost
value.
it's almost as if he was. And then the other part of it too, because like I understand that like Tamis is special, right? Like that's why I even hopped. I wasn't gonna come on here, but I was hopping on here because I'm like, oh, we have a Tamis, and like I'm gonna jump on here and Kiki because like
That's the
Tamis and I
homie
like
right
met,
there. What's
like,
good, Allie?
yeah, I mean we met, like, it's funny because it was like we met and then it was like, wait a minute, your former IHOP? Wait a minute, like your former, like, what? And so because we met in another context in this. But anyway, so it's kind of like I feel like that Tamis deserves the intro. And at the same and yet at the same time, I'm like, Brantley, why didn't you bring the intro like 3 weeks ago? So
Yeah, it's a little feeling of like, but did I not deserve the intro? And
I
that's
wasn't
valid,
gonna say
Allie.
that.
Like,
I
but
wasn't
I'm
gonna
gonna
say
say it
that.
for you
But
because I'm big
now
on.
that you say that, yeah, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I'm special too, and I did not get an intro. I did not get a fancy countdown. I did not get a song. I didn't get a track. So I don't know. Like I'm gonna have. I guess I'm gonna have to deal with my spirit of offense
Gonna have
because
to have a dedicated.
One thing I've heard that helps is a good therapist. And
Oh,
so
okay, yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to talk to my therapist about this. But it's okay.
There you go,
It's
Ben.
okay,
I just put the link
Just for you.
to the IHOP KC Stories Facebook page in the comments there. Woo. So I'm gonna bring something up, and Tamis, like, you can keep talking some, and we'll listen and ask questions and stuff. Let's see if I can find it here. We made a starred comment, something that Austin had asked. We hadn't gone here yet, but question for Tamis: what did you think October 28th?
Oh, is that the message? The Black Horse thing?
I think that was is if I'm
That's
Or that's the
just
one
when everything
he was-
broke. That's just
that's when
everything
that's
went
when
public.
Dwayne and West released the
I
statement.
mean, I honestly thought typical. I mean, that was my honest, like, typical, basically. Yeah, I wasn't surprised. But,
Yeah. Has all of this happening caused you to reprocess any of your time there?
I think my experience with particular leaders, yes. I think for the most part, in terms of like caring, I think when I first left, I really still cared about whether leadership would say I was still fiery, right? Or something like that, or I was still faithful. So caring about that has been gone by the wayside. But I think the things that have come up have been twofold. One, I'm really freaking proud of myself that I left.
Yep.
And like got myself some healing. And that feels really good because it felt like it was a choice I made, right? But then on the other hand, it's bringing up how, in light of all of these other things, I remember thinking, and there's a couple people on the chat that I'm like, they probably remember this because I just couldn't call it a cult for the longest time. I was like,
Yeah.
there's no sex stuff. I mean, really, that I was like, there's no sex stuff. It's not a cult because there's no sex stuff. And it's like, soon as I started to say that, all of this stuff hit the fan. So that's been really kind of hitting me of like, whoa, like this was actually that. So I think I felt the normal feelings you might feel, but I don't think that the weight of them or the gravity of them was as intense as it probably could have been if I had just left.
Right. I don't think I realized how hard it was to get I think like seeing where people are now and trying to get out, I don't think I realized it's as hard to get out as it is, because I had just like a by chance circumstance to where I moved because of other reasons. And it sounds like you had a pretty simple exit from what you described earlier.
Well, I mean, it wasn't simple. It just wasn't public.
Yeah.
Right. It was definitely not simple. It was very lonely, actually, because at that time, you wonder if you just couldn't hack it.
Yeah.
No pun intended, right? Like you wonder if like you just weren't one of the ones, right? Like you wonder those things. I mean, you've been singing and praying and preaching and hearing preached these ideas about what it means, what Christianity 101 is. And so the idea that something in you won't let you give yourself to that anymore, you question your own faithfulness, zeal, reality, So I think no, it wasn't simple. It just was not loud and public and for lack of a better term, and not to make light of the stuff that's happening now, but it was very unpopular. So people who
Yeah.
left before it was like so much stuff in the light,
Yeah.
no one had any reason for that, if that makes sense. So like you kind of felt like it's lonelier to do it that way because people don't understand why, right? They think there's
I'm
something
assuming
wrong.
like a lot of your connections and
Mhm.
friends and stuff didn't stay in touch.
Oh, I mean, they did until I started talking about like BLM and stuff like that.
That'll do it.
That'll do it.
Wow.
Clear. I mean, I didn't know, but yeah, clearly.
Uh,
Well, yeah, that's a great way like to purge your friends list is to start talking about that and to start talking about like the dignity of all human life and people and everything.
Mm.
Great way
I mean,
to
that
find
was
out who
that
your
was
friends
hard.
are.
That was real
I
hard.
think that's
Anyway.
what I think that's what like for me that was like the thing that kept killing me, right? Like so I've got kids who are disabled. I got friends who got kids who are disabled, and seeing people be like, as a society, we don't think it's our job to figure out healthcare together. Oh, like that's the role of the church. But I'm like, I haven't been to a church that paid my kids healthcare.
I don't
I
think I've
haven't
seen
been
a church pay a hospital bill. I'm
right.
sure they
Like I
have.
haven't
Got that
been.
I've
right.
seen it.
Like I can barely get my church friends to like, give money on a GoFundMe or whatever. And it was like we could build like if we really believed this, right? Like if we really thought, okay, all human life worth it, right? Like every life matters. We don't want abortion, whatever. You really could build something absolutely fucking beautiful. Like you could build something. Like if you really did that and you really if like we're giving 24/7 prayer. I gave up whatever many years, like Missy gives up her 20s. People give up their 20s. People gave up their 30s even. Okay, so you really do that instead of developing yourself. You really don't do a career. You give everything. Like we could have built something fucking amazing. Like you could build so much infrastructure to take care of people. Like I think of like Tracy Laux, her kids, and like I think about my mom, like what she built. So my mom's a psych nurse, and she's like a for real good one. Like I remember for Christmas, she was so intense. Like so she's someone who hooked me up with the House of Prayer, which I called Freaks of the Bridegroom. So I like knew it was a cult. Like I was talking to Julie Royce today. It was not a great conversation, but at one point I was like, yeah, like I kind of knew it was a cult. I called it Freaks of the Bridegroom. She was like, I haven't heard that one. And I was like, yeah, no, that's an original. It's from me to you. It's what it was, man. And so, no, but so like, my mom, she tried to do her own thing. She ran our youth group because nobody else would. Like, it's only like 8 of us, right? And she's like, we're going to do intercessory prayer. We're going to do harp and bowl. And for her, that meant we fill up with love, like experiential love from God. Like we love on God, He loves us back, right? And then we go and pour that out as an offering. And it was like really beautiful. Like I remember for Christmas one year, my dad fixed up a car. Like he bought a car for $800. He fixed it up and he gave it away for, and we put all our Christmas presents in that car for this family that lost their house, and like they were gonna live out of that car, so we like made it so they could live in there with their 2 kids. And it was like real sacrificial love. Like she didn't fuck around. Like she like put her money where her mouth was, like over and over. And I grew up with that. And so I thought was going to be that. Like I thought it was going to be like, I thought we were going to like house the homeless. And I thought we were going to like find people who needed to be loved. And we were going to love them the way they were loved. Because that was like the thing. It was like experience the love of God. And then you go and love people like you've been loved. And that was like, I can do that. Like, and that just made sense. I could give up my life. Like right now, in the space I'm in where I don't even know if I believe in God, I could give up my life for that if I thought that was real. If I thought that was going to happen, I don't need this shit. Like, I can do that if I could find people to run with it, right? And
We thought there was going to be a worship and prayer city with the Truman property, you know?
right? Yeah, like, yeah, like
Olympic Village, like 5.0. It's like there were plans.
and then you get
They're
out
right
there, and it's like they're like, you're like telling them like, oh, it's like, no, it's the church's job. We can't build that. And I'm like, you're the church though. Like we could all build it together. And they're like, no, we got it. The church has to do it by getting into governmental power, right? So like, here's the road. Like the whole pitch is elect our guys. Yeah, I'm gonna go a little political. It's fine. I had 2 or 3 bourbons, so and then I got
I gotta pee. Can I go pee?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take you down for a second. I'll see when you come back.
Do it. So like the pitch is get Christian government. I don't know what's happening in Rubio's section.
Joe's
That's amazing.
And the train of his robe filled the temple, right? And the incense arose.
Amen.
Like
Amen, Joe.
I am the temple. It's like I'm
absolutely
off of my
the incense
breakdown from a week ago. So it's like, but we're T-minus like 6 hours until we have to be at the airport to leave this goddamn country. So
this is a good time to be here.
Oh,
the
is this
incense
really?
of Rubio is filling the open space, and I'm here for it.
Man, you tying that fish, that fly online is killing me. Like I've
Y'all
been
should
sitting
go
here.
follow Joe's TikTok and just watch him tie flies.
Please do.
Cathartic. It's like
Please
relaxing.
it
I'll like
No, I
open
feel
my
that.
morning.
like everything in life is so chaotic, and you know, once I am able to create something with my hands in front of me, and there's a process to everything, then you can, you know, it's like, wow, maybe I could fix some other things, you know, in my life. And so it sounds funny, but it's like it really is the way how my heart resonates. And so yeah,
I love that.
it's my
I love that so much.
like it's my religion, just like weapons are to the Mandalorian. You know, this is my shit. That and cute little corgos, a little crazy.
Oh my gosh, it's so fluffy.
Yeah,
Okay, but I want to speak to that. Like, let's go there. Like, it's methodical. If you can build that, like, if you can do that, maybe you can fix some other shit. Like, keep going on that.
Oh yeah, because well, I'll just use a real life example because yeah, it wasn't what's today, Friday, so
Mm.
not last week, but the week before last, it was like yeah, things started kind of spiraling out of control for me. So ended up just crying the whole night and feeling like shit. But I forced myself to get the confidence to go to my local fly shop, pull my vise out, and just start tying flies in front of people. And you know, because they're like old dudes, right? And they're kind of you know, and I'm just this young dude who just walks in, and they let me walk out of the store with like $1,000 fly rod just to like cast. And I'm like, hey, you know what? I could, you know how they have like those sign twirlers? Like, you could just put me out in front of your fly shop and people will be like, whoa, what's that guy doing? Like, let's go in and check that out. And I don't know if they thought I was like on drugs or something, but literally just my eyes had just been crying all night. And I'm just like over here doing my little thing. And, you know, people were coming in and out. And then I started giving some of my flies away and made me feel really good. And so, yeah, that's my story.
That's beautiful, though. It really like that's been like one of the hardest things I think for a lot of people that I after leaving not even just like IHOP, but leaving other religious environments is like finding hobbies and finding like things that give you meaning and like
Yeah.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous.
I think
Jealous.
I think I think what I love about it, right, is you're doing something that has a rhythm that grounds you.
Yeah, ritual.
And I think that that is something that so like in IHOP, I think to stay there, what a lot of us had to do, I'm realizing, is I think we had to dissociate.
100%.
I think
what
I think
what do you
we
think the
were,
neurodivergents were
yeah.
doing in that room?
Like I think at first maybe we felt more alive, but then to like stay existing in that space, I think we had to dissociate either from who we were or like you had to dissociate like you just weren't. I remember just not feeling present. Like I was talking with someone the other day and we were trying to remember anything from that time. And I just couldn't. I had like memories, but I did not remember most of my time there. Like I don't like days. It feels like it was all one day in a million years and nothing happened. And I don't know if it was just that like we were absorbing. I don't know if it was like coping with the cognitive dissonance. I don't know if it was coping with the our sense of self being eroded. Like I have no idea. But I think I love making flies and that like just that image basically, right? Because it's you regrounding. It's like to me said, you're listening to your body. It regrounded you after that crisis, right? And
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
methodical. Like
Yeah.
you're back in it and it's simple,
Mhm.
you
You're,
know?
and then of course, you know, like you're fighting away the tears, and you know the old guys love to come around and people love to correct other people, right? Like they just
Mm.
love to go over your shoulder and like you're doing this wrong. And I'm tying some pretty good looking bugs too, and so I was kind of having fun with them, and I was like, yeah, I've never tied, this is my first time, I just started like a week ago. uh and he just kind of looked at me kind of funny, and you know, and there's, you know, a lot of about this the sport of fly fishing. There's like the competition style too, which is kind of rather new in the country. And some of the old, you know, similar to how there's like the old guard and the new guard, there is some kind of resistance there because like fly fishing such an inclusive sport. Like for women, kids. I mean, fly fishing's already kind of a little gay to begin with. So it's like just lean in and break it, brother. You know, you like jerking your rod? Well, let's go down to the river, homie. So no, but it's cool because you know you find all the things like that I was looking for in church, like mentorship, people I could look up to, and I've been out of IHOP for 12 years now, and it's like no longer look up to spiritual leaders, authors, but then you discover fly fishing and fly tying, and the way I describe it, it's like you have your friend your cousin's playroom, but then you find like a secret door that leads to another playroom that nobody knows about, and then you're just like, oh shit, these are like toys that no other kids have, kind of thing. So that was like that experience for me, and all of a sudden it's like I got people I look up to, and my dad is a big reason why I got into it, and now I'm kind of doing it for my son too. And so plus everybody's just like starving for authenticity and something that's real, and I fucking hate how fake our world is. And sorry, I can't use that language.
Steeler Rubio, you're good.
Just living in an alternate reality. But guess what? I'm still here, and the world is just gonna have to deal with me, for the time being. Amen. Because it's hard too, because you get displaced from a place like IHOP and try to reacclimate to the real world, and creative people like myself really don't fit into corporations too well either, so I'm like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do? There's nothing's real. And so, but that's my black and white kind of thinking. It's not always like that, and so stuff to work on in therapy. So I'll shut up now.
Have y'all, do the rest of y'all, do y'all have any like special interests, like where you've like found community and like some kind of non-spiritual thing?
I wouldn't say my stuff is like non-spiritual.
Yeah, it's you're school
I
me.
mean, like,
School
are
me.
we like? I don't know if we're I don't know how much we can or can't say, but like,
You're
You
good.
a lot of my favorite moments are like under the influence of cannabis, talking
Yeah.
about
Mm.
the holy, and with people who are pagan and like, I mean, just atheists. I mean, it's just so beautiful once God is not fenced. Like it becomes, I don't necessarily have to separate myself from spirituality anymore. And so I can invite it into all these other spaces that I'm in. And that's been really cool. So I think in a lot of ways, like for me, like spirituality has been that part has been untampered with. I just wasn't ever allowed to like name it. But now that I can name it, I'm like, yeah, I'm still spiritual. I just I just do what I want in the midst of it.
And I think that to Tamisha's point, that like one of the things about whiteness is that it creates dichotomies, it creates binaries, it creates like it's either this or this. So for example, in white Christianity, it's like, oh, it's either secular or it's Christian. And so
Right.
like you have your secular music or you have like your Christian music, and ne'er the twain shall meet. And for myself then to answer Brantley's question, that for me, like it's not so much been like, oh, I've got to find things that like aren't spiritual, or I've got to find things that aren't like whatever, but it's more like really just being fully embodied in who I am as an individual, and bringing that into and living fully embodied, rather than living in this like idea of like, well, I've got to be in this space where I'm in the presence of God. And I think that, before House of Prayer, before all that kind of stuff, like I'm just naturally like a very spiritual person, and naturally like just have always especially like since, I really connected with like my Christian faith and Christian spirituality. That's always been part of who I am. And that's something um that I'm happy that I had before I encountered all this, before I got into cultic religion. So it was really easy for me to then kind of go into kind of, who I've always been. But then also opening up more and not being afraid of other people, of other spiritualities, of other like things. Yeah, because I think that something I think I mentioned this one of the last times that I was on, where like in combating cult mind control, Stephen Hassan like talks about how cults like implant phobias in you. Like if you leave, it's like, oh, if
Mhm.
you leave, you're gonna,
Yeah.
lose your salvation, you're gonna lose your mind, you're gonna this and that and the fourth. And so I think that one of the phobias that this movement like places in people is that like, oh, your heart's going to become dull. Like if you're not engaging, if you're not engaging in the place of prayer, then your heart's going to become dull, and you're going to this and that and whatever. And so like realizing that like, my heart isn't dull just because I'm not like sitting in somebody's room praying with like music going on, or my heart isn't dull because like, I'm not out here reading the Bible like, for hours and hours a day because I've got kids, I've got like other responsibilities, and so I'm not able to do this all the time. So I just have found other so I guess I just have found ways to ground myself, and some of those
Yeah.
things are spiritual and some of them aren't.
Yeah. That's good. I'm gonna bring up some of what people were sharing too about stuff that they've done to help. So Ben was talking about smoking meat in the solitude zen.
Mm.
Nice.
The house
Um,
plants. Put up the one about the house
I
plants.
will. I will. I'm making my way
Like,
down.
oh,
She was,
yeah. Okay, I see where
what
you're
is
at now.
Kansas City Oasis? Does anybody know what that is? I don't know what that is. Is it like a water park?
Isn't that the rooftop bar?
That's
Pretty sure that's
amazing.
the
I
rooftop
love
bar
that.
in Waldo.
I love that.
I could be wrong, but I lived in Waldo.
Spirituality integration. And Nicole's talking about working out, cooking, taking care of pets, helping my friend with 5 kids under the age of 5. It's been super grounding for me.
Yeah.
Kids are like
And
one
I
of the
think
most grounding things that like bring you back to reality. Like
Yeah,
having a
for sure.
5-year-old kid like say something just totally off the wall or profound or anything in between just helps snap you into the moment.
For sure.
Or a corgi.
Or what? Or corgi, yeah.
Corgi.
so. Last
Taking
year,
care
I
of
like this right
houseplants.
here. Taking care of houseplants pulled me out of my hardest place. So last year, we had like a death of like another death of our self dream, all of it, like and we had to move. We moved from Kansas City to here in March, and that about killed me because I'd worked so hard to build a life, right, and make it work, and we'd spent years, and we'd tried to build relationships and all this stuff, and it was so hard to lose all of it because the system that we were in wasn't supportive, right? Like the schools didn't have enough, and I have kids with special needs, and so we had to move, and we had to move to just this like random little town. It's a great little town, but it's like it's not my dream. It's not the kind of place that I am drawn to in any way. But it was going to be good for our kids, and so I gardened, and there was something so healing about watching things grow, and some of them die, and some of them I could nurse back to life, and some of them I couldn't. But
Or have to cut off the parts you mess up.
Mhm.
Give it a little too much sunlight, and the leaves start turning brown. You got to trim them off.
I had
and
this, yeah,
it's
I
like the
had this
defeat.
tomato plant. And so my next door neighbor, she's like a florist. And so she's really non-judgmental. She doesn't grow fruiting plants, but I'm pretty sure she could grow a better garden than me. And so she would watch, and I had this tomato plant, and I just kept fucking it up. Like at one, it had like aphids ate it alive, and then like all this crazy stuff happened. But every time it could come back around. Like it was wild, this plant. And then I'd get like a tomato each time that it came back to life. And it was just really healing because it like there's a cycle, right, to it. And you can go through a whole cycle of life and death and bring it, get close and back and forth the whole cycle. And then it goes back into the ground. It goes dormant for a while.
Yeah.
But you actually do get to try again. And I think going through that process and realizing, like, getting to the end of it and going like, okay, I didn't get like that much out of this. Like I got like 8 tomatoes or something stupid, right? And 2 of them had blossom rot. So it was like they were shit. But I had figured out so much. And every single time that it came back, this dumb plant came back to life, it just made me so happy. And I realized that the coming back to life was worth all the death, right? And that I could do it again the next year and do it better. Because I had figured a lot out. And then the cycle stopped being so scary. Because for me, it was like, why would I invest? Like, because like I'm a city girl. I didn't grow up gardening. Nobody gardened in my family ever. I didn't know any of that stuff. So I'm learning it for the first time, which was really hard because a lot of people who garden, like they have like these like histories, like, oh, my grandma, and you have that like generational knowledge that you can build on. And I felt like I don't have any generational knowledge. And that's actually how I kind of feel about like faith, right? Like I had a ton of generational knowledge in this like charismatic Christianity that ended up being toxic. And I can do that in my sleep. But it was like this is something new now that I'm doing, right? Like that thing died. Like I realized this wasn't okay and I had to exit and start a life in a whole new culture that I didn't understand. I didn't know how to connect to. I didn't know how to find my like place in it or even find meaning in it. Like there was meaning in the rituals of Christianity. There's a ton of meaning in communion, but I couldn't take communion because all of my rituals were triggers. They were all tied to trauma. And so, like, then what do you do when everything that brought you meaning is a trigger? Like, then nothing has meaning anymore. And then do you find how do you make something that has that much meaning when all your history is tied up in it? Like, you can't just like pull that out of your ass because it's steeped in years of meaning. It's like layers of richness, and then you've lost all of that. And that was a huge grief for me. And I realized that I think the reason those things were so rich was because they were steeped in like these cycles of life and death, right? Like in the church, you think about the history of the church, and you go through like Catholicism, you go through all of it. And we have these rituals we do, right? And then they die. And then they're like reborn again and they're better. And then they die again because we fuck them up. And then they're reborn again. And I started going like, well, I'm with the plants, right? Like this is a cycle of death. Like we're going through a cycle of death in a movement in the church. And maybe something could be born again. Like maybe, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be, but I think this is the death part. And that's why it's so hard and so empty.
Yeah.
Teach knee high. No mud, no lotus. Everybody wants the lotus flower, but you don't want all the muck and the mire and the ground that eventually fertilizes and gives nutrients to these beautiful flowers that bloom every year.
Yeah.
Sorry to
one.
bring my Eastern mysticism into the equation.
No, I'm
mean,
gonna
but
bring it
even
back
like
around.
That's all right.
Nah, I mean,
Yeah.
like, yeah, even more than
That's meaningful.
mysticism, it's like indigenous, right? Like indigenous
Mhm.
people
Yeah.
guide their spiritual praxis and the way they think about the divine and actual, like, they tether that shit to the moon,
Look.
Yeah.
grass and trees.
Yep.
And like, so seasons is not, Christians don't own that shit.
Right.
People were paying attention to seasons before Christianity.
That's
And I
it.
think that that's like
The whites
part of
don't
that,
own
like,
it. That's what we get at.
But our
well, no, I
faith
mean, I think
became
that's part of
disembodied.
right. It's the
Yes.
disembodiment.
Yeah.
Because you
That's
can't.
white Christianity
Yeah.
became
Yeah.
very extremely extraordinarily
Yeah.
disembodied. But sorry,
Yeah.
Denise, I didn't mean to interrupt
No,
you.
go.
but-
No, you good. Like that's what I'm essentially getting at, is that like you're talking about how you had to disassociate. You think about what you're doing, you're worshiping Jesus 24/7. And our entire faith is disembodied. So everything we ever talked about was either future or imaginary. Close your eyes and picture,
Mhm.
a throne of grace. Close your eyes and picture a sea of glass. Or there's a day of the Lord is coming. Everything is future and everything's imaginary, because it doesn't have to tether itself to anything. It doesn't need anything real and substantial to make sense out of life. But I mean, indigenous people were dealing with different realities, right? So they needed God to work. They needed God like here, right now. And I think that that's one of the probably the more sad realities that I see, is that there's so many people deconstructing that bypass so much indigenous wisdom.
Mhm.
And so they think the only option is to be super Christian or super atheist, that there's no other
Why
path.
Jesus strikes again.
Why Jesus strikes again? That's right. Right?
We
Like,
gotta play
and
that
if you
later.
decide to be atheist, cool. But at least like don't do whiteness a favor by bypassing the voices and the experiences of other people. I mean, you have to also decolonize, because
Yeah.
like when you were talking,
that.
Susan, earlier about like how you felt like this thing is like eating everything up. Well, that's colonization. That's what that
Mhm.
means,
That's
right?
white
To
supremacy,
conquer
fam.
and to take.
Yeah.
And like I think everybody should do themselves at least a little bit of a favor in terms of making meaning, is to go see how other people who have been on the bottom of the shoe of this fucking country have made meaning. Because they
Mhm.
didn't have another place to get it but to conjure it. So I think that there's
Mhm.
wisdom there, that I think a lot of folks are feeling aimless because they don't even have access to that wisdom, and they've never been told that there's wisdom there. But there's
Mhm.
tons of indigenous wisdom out here, like
And you're
tons of it.
told that it's wrong. It's a
Yeah,
phobia that's
demonic.
placed on it.
hmm
Speak on that.
Yeah, they called all of that stuff demonic. And it's so funny
Mhm.
because it's like you got to think about like Christmas trees. I like to think about Christmas trees. I think that's the most like easiest way to bring it down to home. Like Christmas trees were pagan, but we do them every year. We got people voting for presidents over Christmas trees and Starbucks cups. But
Well.
drums and African spirituality is demonic,
Mm.
right?
Mm-mm.
So it's like y'all decide what's holy, what's not, what's demonic, what's
Well,
not,
well.
and what is the standard for that?
Yeah.
Even perfection, like Joe was talking about, the man coming and like rubbing his shoulders and telling him he's doing something wrong. Somebody said perfection was key. Like somebody said that perfection was holy, but I don't think that's what holiness is. Holiness is honesty. It's not perfection.
Mm-mm.
You know what I'm saying?
Well. Mhm.
Somebody lied to us, y'all.
Yeah.
Big
Lied.
time.
Lied.
Big time.
Lied. You know, something that I was thinking about whenever you were talking about communion earlier, and even like the imagination, the imaginary, the disembodiment. I've mentioned before that I'm Episcopalian now, and so one of the things that one of the beliefs within the Episcopal Church and other kind of similar faiths is whenever we receive communion, we're receiving the body and blood of Christ, and that's not symbolic, and it's the presence. It's the doctrine is called the real presence. It's the presence. So we have the presence of God with us in the service, in the body and blood of Christ as we receive the Eucharist. And so for me, that was something that was very healing coming out of I went into the Episcopal Church directly from an abusive church, where pastor stuff was abusive, but also like kind of, you know, getting out of the house of prayer, et cetera, et cetera. And that was something that I found very grounding, that I didn't have to try to work up the presence of God in myself. In like, well, if I'm like I gotta pray and I gotta pray in tongues. I mean, I still speak in tongues. I still pray in tongues. I still pray. I still experience the presence of the Lord the way that I did in those contexts. I still have the same type of feeling, because that was something that I had that I brought with me into the house of prayer. But then that was spirituality that I brought with me into that. So again, like, I'm not gonna let Mike Bickle take that from me. I'm not gonna let Mike Bickle take my prayer language from me. I'm not gonna let Mike Bickle take my experience of the Holy Ghost from me that I had at a Pentecostal in the back room of a small rural Pentecostal church in Warrensburg, Missouri. Like, I'm not gonna like Mike Bickle cannot take that from me. Like, you know, the United Pentecostal Church cannot take that from me. Other things cannot take that from me. But with that said, though, just, you know, in my journey, there was a point where I started to really feel like unmoored, where it was just sort of like, you know, I'm out here and, you know, I've been in some of these different churches, I've been in some of these different contexts, and there was just a lot that I'm just like, it just feels like a lot of what we believe, a lot of what we say, a lot of what we do isn't grounded in anything. It's just, you know, because I come out of, and some of this, I started to feel this because I had come out of ministries that were chasing the latest prophetic word, or chasing the latest this, or chasing the spiritual that, and revival, and blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, this just all just, it just is a hum. It's just like, you know, I got, one of the reasons why I got out of the house of prayer is because I literally, and I would tell my husband this all the time. I'm like, I'm listening to these messages, and like, it just makes my ears hurt, because it's all these words and ain't nobody saying nothing. It's all this lofty high language, and people aren't, and
There was
and
something about that in the Sermon on the Mount. I'm pretty sure.
like, it's wild. And so like I would be sitting, I would be feeling so unspiritual, because I would hear all these words, people, you know, building palaces out of paragraphs, to quote Hamilton.
That part.
And I'm sitting here, and people are, you know, whoa, and this, and and I'm like, well, I like fam, I ain't feeling it. I ain't feeling it like that. And so anyway, I just really started to feel unmoored, and I'm just really like, what is this even? Like, I have faith in God, but what is this that I'm even doing in church? So all that to say, because I think that the house of prayer, I talk about sometimes, like, that the house of prayer to liturgical church pipeline, like, there is one, whether people want to acknowledge that or not, there definitely is a pipeline there. You know, there is like a lot of house of prayer people that are now like Lutheran, Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, Episcopalian, Anglican, like, it's a lot of us out here. So anyway,
Calvinist.
Reform.
No.
Poor Brantley.
That's like saying Voldemort.
Nobody.
No, Tino shade to our Calvinist friends out there.
You know, I had nothing to do with it. It's not my fault.
You're just like, no, it was total depravity. It had nothing, like, it was it was Tulip, fam. It was blame it on Tulip
gang.
But yeah, so anyway, but there was something that was attractive to me about okay, cool. So like, I can receive this little wafer, and I can receive this communion wine, and that's the presence. And that's like that's
Mm.
the real presence. And I mean, Jesus is out here saying in the Bible, like, do this in remembrance of me. He wasn't out here saying, he wasn't saying, sing about releasing the fullness. He wasn't
Come
out
on,
here.
Allie.
He wasn't out here
Glory.
talking about the
Oh,
Shekinah
child.
glory. He wasn't out here talking about shaking and baking and falling and all this other type of stuff. He said, do this in remembrance of me. And so that was something that just really and again, my spiritual practice still includes certain elements of things, of aspects of things that I received before the prayer movement, that I received during the prayer movement, and things that I cultivated afterward. But yes, like finding new things and then making meaning, or finding different meaning, kind of reassigning, reascribing, whatever. So like, finding practices that however you're comfortable, whatever works for you, but finding ways, like for me, finding ways to connect with my ancestors, finding ways to bring the cloud of, so for me, the way that I understand that is through the cloud of witnesses, and thinking about like, or the cloud of witnesses and like the saints is like, oh, okay, like I can talk to these people. Like I believe my grandma is more alive than I am right now, and I believe that she's with Jesus, and so like I can bring those elements in and bring things that are meaningful to me into my Christianity, because there isn't just one Christianity, there are multiple Christianities. And yeah. And so like I think that, and the last thing I'll say, and then I'll hush, is, I mean, like I don't want us to skate past what Timmy's is saying about the decolonizing. Like that is like a pet peeve of mine. Like, again, no offense to my white siblings out there who consider themselves deconstructionists, but that is something that like really makes me itch, is that white folks talk a lot about deconstruction, but their deconstruction looks a whole hell of a lot like colonization still, and it looks a whole hell of a lot like silencing Black people still, like ignoring Black and brown and indigenous experience and knowledge. And I'm not like no tea no shade if you decide to become atheist, but I just feel like a lot of folks like they leave charismatic movement, they leave white evangelicalism, they sashay away from that, and then sashay right like past all these other sources of knowledge, and here's the thing, here's the part that gets me. Well, I couldn't stay in Christianity because of blah 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 blah. Oh, the Christianity didn't accept me. It's like, but you skipped over. Like, again, I'm not criticizing. I don't want you to hear this as criticism of people being atheistic. Do not hear that. If that's not, because that's not what I'm saying. I'm speaking specifically about the people who were like, well, I want to stay Christian, but like, they just didn't. And it's like, what you're describing is white Christianity. Like you didn't like what you're describing is whiteness. Did you ever have have conversations with your Black, with your Latina, with your Asian, with your indigenous kindred? And again, like Christianity might not be the panacea for everything that you've experienced. And I'm not, people who are agnostic, people who are atheistic, this is not like a criticism of you per se, as much as it's not a, well, you should just try Christianity differently and try it harder. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that whenever you sashay away, and then you go and you were doing white supremacy as a white evangelical, and then you sashay away and you're still doing white supremacy as an atheist or an agnostic, all you did, like you deconstructed, but then like you're still invested in the same system. Like you're still invested in the very thing that you're leaving, because you think that it's a spiritual issue. You think that it's a doctrinal issue. You think it's a Bible issue, when it might be those things, and it's also a white supremacy, because a lot of the complaints that you have about white evangelicalism
Mm.
are about the whiteness of evangelicalism. It's not about the spirituality. How many people say, like, I connect with spirituality? Well, guess what? So do your indigenous brothers and sisters and siblings. Guess what? So do your Black brothers and sisters and other siblings. Like, we are spiritual people, and we were spiritual people before there was Christianity inflicted upon us. And so we might have wisdom and knowledge that you haven't been exposed to yet. So anyway, so I'm saying that, like, just a lot of times your gripe is not just with Christian doctrine, it is also with white supremacy. And so, like, don't go through all the gut-wrenching stuff of leaving Christianity but still take white supremacy with you. Don't do that.
Because I mean, ultimately, you'll end up having to do it again, right? You'll have
Well,
to divest again.
Mm.
I'm thinking about like
Mm.
your thought about atheism and agnosticism and like how they're two different realms, right? And I think in one way, no matter what we do, we will all be agnostic because we just can't know. Like Gnosticism is about knowledge, theism is about belief. So if you choose into atheism, you've made a decision about what you're willing to believe. But I think everybody will always be agnostic. There is just no way to know for sure. And I think the reason I'm like trying to out here talking about decolonizing is because that the danger in being so absolute and so certain is that it actually doesn't hold space for nuance eventually at the end of the day. So if you just go from being, you know, evangelical, charismatic to like staunch atheist, but you don't do that other work, like you will actually end up harming people just from the other side. And so I think there's a way that we can like hold space for the fact that none of us will ever know. But like, I would love to know as much as I can. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
it's like trading
think-
one form of fundamentalism for another.
Absolutely. They're the same thing.
I
Well,
think
the
what's
jury is
interesting is, oh,
really
go ahead, Joe.
Yet, you know, and we just change our minds once we get new information, right? We're observant beings.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think it's interesting because we're talking about this, and we talked about how white Christianity is really disembodied. And I think about, you know, we talk about like, to me, you said like our indigenous brothers and sisters, like they needed God to work.
Yeah, hell yeah, they did.
You know,
they was dealing with white
and,
Jesus.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
And white
White-
Christianity is so, you know, like you have your needs because you're like, your how society works, right? Like it works for you. And so you don't need God to work but for you. You more like put him to work for you. It's like a different thing. And
Putting to work.
And
That
so,
sounds an
like, I
awful
think
lot like
about-
slavery.
Mhm.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
Seriously, let
interrupt.
that
No,
hang, yo.
it's
For real, what
good.
you just said. Like that's deep what you just said.
And so I think
Ooh.
about what Allie was saying, you know, like do this in remembrance of me, that communion was like the core thing that you went back to. And that's
Mhm.
what you could do. And that's a really embodied act, like naturally. That's saying this is a thing I need and I take it into me and then I use that to energize what I do.
Yeah,
And
fam, look, like candles, whatever. Sorry, I didn't realize you were still talking. My
whatever
bad.
it is. No. But like my thinking is, you know, the whole bit of communion is that it involves a death, like, right, to
Mhm.
begin with. And when we go from one form of like fundamentalism or supremacy to another, because with atheism, and no shade with atheists, but like you are deciding that your view is the right view when you fix it like that. Like when you decide there's no God, then you decide everyone else's meaning is meaningless. And that's hard. That's hard for me to square with. I'll just be honest. I'm not saying I don't understand being like, I don't
Right.
think there's a God, because there's been a lot of times when I don't think there's a
Right.
God. Like Tuesday. I didn't think she
Yeah.
was a god. You know, like just
Twice
as
a week.
recently as, you know, like, yeah, like days that start with T, also days that end with day are the days that I feel
It's-
that a lot.
It's such a like what you're
and I
saying though.
cry
Such
about
a
it.
it's such a subtle shift, and I think it's whiteness is that my brain went kaput.
Well, I'll say this. I
Right,
want to say
right.
with communion. Someone said last week, I think it was like Iwona. I don't know how to say her name, to be honest. She's like a cool lady who's online
Am I
a
Awen?
lot. No, not I know how to say Awen's name.
Okay, I
God,
was like,
gonna
what?
make me look so bad. Get me in trouble.
I was like, girl,
Um,
what?
You're like, calm down. No, it's Iwona, but I see her on Twitter all the time, and she's got like good stuff to say. Iwona? I don't know. Yeah, Nicole knows. Look at this. She knows.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Oh, I remember
Yeah.
what I was gonna say, so
Ivana?
finish.
Could be. Yeah, everybody's
Hold
like,
it,
we
B.
don't know.
Don't let it go.
I'm trying not to.
Um,
I'm trying not to.
You hold on to it.
I got it.
But she was talking about the communion of suffering.
Mm.
And to me, so you were talking about indigenous people need God to work. And I think the thing that gets me about communion is that that's all about embodiment too, since we're just going to do like a whole theme and like bring it back around.
Yeah.
But it's going, I'm going to take this thing I believe and I'm going to take it into me, right? And then I'm going to let that fuel whatever I do. And I think for me, like, that's where I started to come back to life a little again, was I let the form die of what my faith was going to be. I had to let that die. And if you don't let the form die, like the rigidity or like whatever it is, and also like almost like the formlessness to die too, like you have to let, because it's like this weird thing that we do. Like we put this like this rule set on it that's real rigid, but it means absolutely nothing. Like it functionally accomplishes nothing. It doesn't affect anyone around me. I go to my church and I do all these things. But if I let like the core of it and like I take that into me and I let it affect me, it totally shapes everything I do after that. And that's the part that brought me back to life a little bit. I felt like that was like some kind of, I feel like that became my communion a little bit, like loving how I'd been loved, loving other people how I'd been loved. And that was where I started to embody my beliefs again in a way that
Susan.
that grounded me again.
I hope you take everything you said tonight, put it to music, give us an album. For
I'll
real.
work right on that.
Look,
Good grief.
She's hiding stuff. I'll tell you. I know for a fact she's hiding stuff.
Don't out me, Brantley.
Tell
I try
anybody.
not to.
Keep it secret. Keep it safe.
You were talking about the dignity of people and everyone, and I realized it was such a subtle shift that I made, but it was a profound one. And I think that that's probably a little bit of decolonizing whiteness in my own life. Was I felt like that my faith prior to going through whatever I went through did not allow me to dignify the spiritual experiences of people who were not Christian.
Yep.
Damn.
And it was, I'm gonna out myself. I might get in trouble for this, but
I'm excited.
I won't
I love it when you
say.
get in trouble.
I'm not gonna get. I won't be careful.
I'm always in trouble. It's Brantley's turn.
No, so I grew up like super sheltered kid. Like it's probably not hard to realize. Like if you hang out with me for a bit, that I wasn't exposed to much as a young child. I wasn't homeschooled.
The beard
though.
shows
I
us.
did go to public school, but
Not the beard.
it was
playing.
just because Tamise brought it up earlier. Like she was talking about cannabis and stuff, and it was the first time I'd tried a THC. Is I had this spiritual experience, if you will.
Oh yeah.
Of that it was two phases. There was two different things that I remember that stuck out to me. The first thing was I was sitting with a friend who's an ex-IHOPper. I won't out him, but a lot of people know him. And we were sitting there together.
But he may
And-
be here in the comments today.
No, he's not.
Yes.
And
That is, people can deduce, B. You gotta chill.
I know. And so I realized, I was like, I looked at him and I was like, dude, we spent all this time looking at this book trying to find God. And I was like, and if we just look up, we'd see him everywhere. Like, it's like we got to fight about what this book says and what it doesn't say. And if we just opened our eyes, we'd see it happening right in front of us. And that was the first thing, which is a very, hippie
I remember
moment.
you telling me about that.
Yeah, I usually share it with my friends because it was impactful to me. And the other thing was that I said, that I verbalized, was I was like, man, like the world really is older than 6,000 years. It's like, if the world really is older than 6,000 years, then how the F do we think that God just started talking like 6,000 years ago?
Just-
Like
just
if
recently,
God
he
is,
was
if
saying.
God
That's
is who we
fast.
think that God is. God has always been speaking. And why do we think it was demons whenever it's somebody with a different skin color across the ocean? Because
Now,
that's the
come
way
on
that
now.
we
You
were
know Hebrews
raised.
1 said God always been speaking. We should know that one.
You would think that's the thing, is that this stuff seems so elementary,
Mhm.
but it wasn't. It was so hidden and safeguarded, and because it kept me in their corners to where they could do with me what they pleased.
Alright.
And whenever I decided that I didn't care about that anymore, life got a whole lot more enjoyable. That whenever I have somebody off the street come up to me and have a conversation with me and know that I don't have to agree with their politics, I don't have to agree with their religious beliefs, but I can appreciate their experience for what it is. And
Yeah.
like being able to like let go of all of that, man, it's a weight off your chest.
Can I tell you something that I just thought about recently? I was just thinking about. Well, actually, I asked the question. Can I tell you about it? Let me ask the question.
Absolutely, friend.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, like, I was thinking about happiness and how happiness was made. Happiness was like an enemy or like a lesser
Yep.
thing. And
Except in Corey
thinking of-
Russell's Sermon on the Mount sermons.
Oh, right.
Who wants to be happy?
but happy in that sense, right? But I mean, even though, like, doing the prep rooms, you touched a little bit of something. I know that I
It's
tapped into
true. It's true.
but like I was thinking about who, like, getting to the place where you decide that if God thinks that this is wrong, I have questions about God. Have you ever felt happiness? Number one. Number two, when have you felt happiness? Usually in the community of people, having sex, experiencing something great, experiencing something communal. So you're telling me that I'm supposed to worship a being that thinks this is not what I should desire? Think about how many sermons and songs we sang about it's not about happiness. Have you ever been happy?
Gotta go low.
So now I have to ask a question about the God you're asking me to worship. And that is a scary question,
Yeah.
but it needs to be asked. Are you telling me once I've experienced happiness, I'm talking about the feeling of it. We know what it feels like to be happy. And you're telling me that God wants me to not feel this, that feeling this is actually making me putting my relationship with God at odds.
Yeah.
Now me and God have to have a conversation, and I need to be asking questions about God at this point. And I had to get to that place. I had to let myself get to the place where I would say, here's what I will and won't worship. Period.
You know,
I mean, you really have to get to that place.
you're talking about questioning God. And I remember I had this conversation about so with IHOP, their big deal is they never question God. You never question, right? Like you're obedient. There's obedience and that's it. And how abandoned you're gonna let me be and all that. And you're not questioning it. And And that's part of what trapped us, right? Because we wanted that bigger thing that was being offered. And that whiteness you're talking about, of like, we got the corner on it, and it's from history is from this time to this time, and it looks like XYZ, and there's only one right way to have experienced it, and there's only one right interpretation of it. That's colonization and whiteness of spirituality, right? So you don't, and you cannot question it. And that was what IHOP was like, even with the prophetic history, right? We had a history. It started when it started. It ended with it ended when it ended. And Mike was the one who knew how to interpret it. And we had to accept that. You could not question it. And so
Whew.
it's like this other thing on the other side of it is like accepting that we don't know and everything, and leaning into it, following the instinct that leads us to it. Like, you know, that bit in like the end of Romans where he's like, he says something about like, I put them, like he wanted men to know him. And so he put them in times and places where they might seek him.
The
Right?
groping
Like,
for God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
grope for him or grasp.
That's
for
the
him.
Alan Hood
Yeah.
singer right there.
Alan, he has some stuff. Like, he's not,
Yeah, man.
you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was that got me thinking about that you said, because it was something, and I was going to bring it back around and I lost it. But I just think, you know, it's really interesting because it's like we had this canister and we were trying to fill it with God instead of like just being in it, right? Like we were trying to, and we were just walking around with it like, can you fill it? Can you fill it? Like with meaning, with purpose, with whatever. And we were told exactly what it looked like instead of just like jumping into it, like the water, whatever it was, and existing in it. And I feel like that's something that finally started to shift for me, where I just dropped the canister. I was like, like, this isn't even that big. Like, it's like
Totally.
kind of small. Like, it sucks.
Totally.
And instead trying to get people to like just jump in the water with me and be like, we can find meaning here. We can figure it out. Even though it's scary and different and totally weird.
You know, you just put that song in my head. Do you remember that song? Jump in the river. Which one was that? You know what I'm talking
Nicole, which part? You gotta tell me which part.
Which
I don't
river
know, you just
song?
made me
Jump in the
think-
river. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah. It's from the Awakening, whatever. But Susan, you were making me think about like somebody like putting the ocean in a cup and then walking around and being like, yo, this is the ocean. And like, technically you're right. But like, there's a lot more to it. So you could kind of try to convince people that this is the ocean. But but you only have a cup. So you can't blame people for like being not that excited about the ocean is this big.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I'm gonna
It's
say
wedge,
it again
bro.
for Nicole. So like, I feel like we were walking around with like this canister of what spirituality was, and that we wanted God to fill. Like, we were like, fill us up, like, you know, like, and we were desperate for that. We're spending all this time trying to fill up this canister.
Well, and he had the Matthew
With-
25 angle of like putting oil in your lamp kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Are you going to have enough oil, the oil of intimacy?
bro, them
And-
songs. I'm hearing songs every time y'all say
Look,
something like
yes.
song.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're sitting there and you're trying to get oil in your lamp or whatever. And it was like, you were never supposed to be, you were never, that's not what it was supposed to be. You were actually supposed to be immersing yourself and living life and being in it, you know, like, I don't know, like when like when I do this, like I haven't done this, you know, like share, right? Lucas is he's having a,
See, I knew it was a real song.
Lucas was one of the original Joy Boy type people.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, the Joy Boys.
We lived together during the awakening, me and Lucas. So.
Oh my gosh.
So I want to pull up this comment right here. So it was so abstract what we were trying to do. And that's what's so funny about it is because
Truly.
it was so fucking specific for being so abstract. Like it literally meant nothing, but goddamn if it wasn't specific. Mike's up there and he's all like, I just want you to know that it was like 1,473 steps across the New Jerusalem. The corridor of glory is actually
Oh my
1.25
drink.
miles long. And
Look,
like
I got my whole
he got
BC right
into
here.
it. Like he was like, technically there was 0.7 inches at it. Like it was like what? And then like we're gonna pray these 15 specific prayers. What to do? What
Wow.
we're gonna fill bowls with like. I'm gonna fill a
Yo.
bowl with intercession that will be poured out. What will happen when it's poured out? It's poured. It's poured. Okay.
It
Thank
will
you
be poured
for
out.
that.
What will
I did.
happen.
And then a thing will like, and we're like, we're gonna fill that goddamn bowl. We're gonna fill it with our prayers, and we're in a room, and like, we could have re-roofed a single mom's house. Like, we could have done so much shit in that time,
Yeah.
and it would have been the embodiment of what we believed. We could have just fucking mowed a lawn. Like, it could have
Meanwhile,
been
in the midst
so
of these
simple.
parenthetical sections.
Like it could have been so simple, but we were in a room filling a bowl, and
Yo.
but the what's funny to me is that the flip of that is that everything we're talking about is ill-defined. You can't sit there and put language to it real well. Like it's like I want to live my beliefs. I want to like embody, like we're like putting all this like, you know, it sounds all mysterious and then it's like just really practical. Like for me at least, like, you know, like for Rubio, it's like, I'm going to make something that reminds me I can fix things.
Or just,
You know?
or even fuck up things. I'm even better at doing that. Like, it's like, oh no, I fucked this up. Then I like realize, well, I'm good at fucking up stuff. So it's like,
Come on, man. That's great. I love it.
And like, but it's like you find the thing
you know,
that helps you come to terms with the stuff, you know, and
Yeah.
that's growth and it's beautiful instead of doing the thing that reminds you you're a fuck up, which is different,
Exactly.
you know. And so, and then, you know, for me, it's I'm gonna figure out how to love people the way I've felt loved. That's it. That's the whole thing. Like that's the whole thing. That's it.
Yeah.
Just ways that I felt loved. I'm gonna try to love other people. And that is more of an embodiment, even though it's so much more vague. That's more grounded and embodied than anything I was doing before.
Rubio, that hit me deep. Like
What's it?
the idea of like, I'm great at failing. I mean,
Oh,
the ability to reframe failure like that, it means that like you don't need people to make meaning for you anymore.
yeah, because I'll just tell you this, you guys, like going, you know, trying to transition back into work and doing like therapy, and I'm an EMDR. I haven't even gotten to like the IHOP cult stuff. Like we're going back to like earliest childhood memories
It's
and
great.
fear, which at the time was fear of failure. And then it's like, all right, like go back to when you were 5 years old and you felt like a failure. And it's just like you're trying to like trigger both sides of your brain. And then, you know, the realization afterwards is like, it's not even just like, you know, it's not even just the fear of failure. It's like a willingness to fail. And then
Yeah.
it's like, dude, I'm a fucking kid. Like, this is where I'm supposed to fail. And I felt like, you know, like I was ruining my parents' marriage and they were so upset at me. And I had a lot of complications, you know, that kind of held me back from making friendships and eventually kind of pushed me towards a place like IHOP, you know, honestly.
Yeah,
So it's
totally.
all kind of rooted in that. But then it's just like, well, now it's like I realize why I'm such a perfectionist, because I feel like somebody's always watching over my shoulder. And with my neurodivergence, my brain has to work like extra hard just to kind of keep up with everything else. And I have to read like a paragraph 5 times before I can understand it. You know, it's just like, where do people like us belong? You know, it's like in cults like IHOP. No, I'm kidding. But no, that's kind of where I'm taking it away from. And unfortunately, I don't have the ability just to forget all these, you know, memories. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you do have to live with yourself and making decisions for yourself. It's like I'm starting to do that for the first time. And you know, it's like, well, you got a wife, you got a kid, you got, you know, people around you too. And, you know, if you ignore yourself there, it's not going to reflect very good on those things too. And so, yeah, I'm in the struggle, man. I'm fighting appeals, you know, insurance companies, HR. And
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, I need to get like a lawyer now. And it's like, is the juice worth the squeeze? So, but one thing's for sure, I got a beautiful beach awaiting for me with my beautiful bride here coming up. So
That's great.
it all makes it worth it. So, but yeah, guys, that's Selah.
Yeah, for sure. I was about to say Ashe. Like that was really. Thank you for sharing that. I think I'm hoping that you find some answers to that, because I think there's a lot of people asking that question. Those questions.
Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah, because it's like I have to believe in myself at some point, you know, and you can trust yourself, and you kind of got this far, and maybe what I thought was God was just, you know, just me coming into myself and being self-aware and realizing that, you know, I'm not the only one on this in this world, you know. And I think that's what draws me so much, just being outside in nature. And you know, then you get a fly rod in your hand, and then you're all of a sudden a part of the game, you know. And then it becomes fun. And yeah, the fleeting joy never gets old. It's like, wow, I found my tribe, you know. And so, but I like to dabble in all kinds of other things. Like last week, I found myself in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, and I happened in on a little red dirt jam, and I picked up the guitar and played music with other human beings for the first time in years. And they're like,
You're gonna
"Holy
play us an outro, right, Joe?
the what?
Tonight? You're gonna play us an outro again tonight, right?
I can, whatever you
Yeah.
want me."
I think it needs to be a staple.
That's gonna happen. Yeah. Yep. Joe's gonna
Like-
play us out.
Like I'm trying to convince my company to let me play the guitar, because it can, like, you know, it's like the Travis Kelce effect. Yes, he's very like loud and eccentric, but Andy Reid can handle that. You know, I'd rather him do that to Andy than to the referee. You know what I mean? So, that's just how my brain works. We're not wrapping up right now, are we?
We got a couple minutes. We got like 3 or 4 minutes before we'll start wrapping up.
Apparently we have 4 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, because apparently the thing about him
This
is
has been a lot of fun, y'all. Thanks for inviting
it
me.
has been fun. You can come back, right, Tamis?
I would love to come back.
Come
I will
back.
say I'm a little bit elderly. I am a geriatric millennial. So
Late nights.
it might as well be tomorrow.
She's sacrificing.
Tamis, like, tell
Oh,
people.
you in the Eastern time zone too.
Yeah,
Look
we
at
both
you.
Tell people where they can find your stuff, how they can follow you, all that kind of stuff. Because I know just from personal experience how helpful your stories and your experiences and even just your just knowledge has been to me. So tell people where they can find you, like on social media and stuff.
Yeah, you can go to Mies Neme Speaks on Instagram, and then I think what's probably gonna be helpful is the podcast.
Is it
'Cause
NAMAE?
yeah, NAMAE. Yeah, like I really do feel like people that go to IHOP are wired a certain way. And I feel like that sincerity we first started talking about still remains. So a lot of my work, I think, it's just always going to probably resonate with that type of person. And so I think that the podcast and the people like I invite on there will be really helpful for folks who are trying to navigate. Because it's called Life After Leaven. So it's like a follow-up to the book. And the book is called Faith Unleavened. But I think those two things in particular will probably resonate the most with folks who are trying to figure stuff out from here. And to also hear, the perspective of somebody who was not white having to deal with IHOP. So
Yep. Allie, you got any parting words of wisdom tonight?
No parting words of wisdom. I'm just really glad that Timmy's was on here. I was so excited whenever I saw that.
Good to see you, sis.
And like, same fam.
I know I haven't
like,
seen
look,
you in a minute.
I know it's been a minute. So I was like, I gotta jump up on here and kiki with my fam for a minute.
And you gotta plug I Won't Shut Up, because we gotta talk about that later.
Yeah, we definitely it's been I've sent you some messages with some of my very strong feelings about some of the stuff that's been going on that is for public consumption. But anyway, yeah, we gotta get together and chat because it's been a minute. But girl, you remember when we talked about some of this like way back?
And you put me on to the Episcopalians, bruh.
Yeah,
you put me onto that. Yeah,
because we was talking about this like 5 years ago, longer than that. Now it's it's been probably 5-6 years ago that we was talking about all this and talking about Trayvon and just talking about white Jesus and all this other type of stuff. So it has been a pleasure to hear your wisdom. And it's also great just because black having another black person up in here, all the black folks in the comments, we out here like yes, amen. We was having church, the blacks, we was having church in the comments before I got on. We were so it's always good and it's always a pleasure. But just your wisdom and the way something that I really value is that you are able to talk about your experience with IHOP. And because I think even probably because of the distance, being able to find some of the good in it. And I think that sometimes in survivor communities, there's a temptation to where it's like the thing is bad. And it's all bad and it's always bad. And there was nothing ever like positive that could come out of it. And I'm sure that is some people's experience. And I don't want to invalidate that. I don't want to sound invalidating at all. But the way that you were able to so naturally talk about your experience with IHOP and acknowledge like, yes, this was a cluster. And yes, there were terrible things. But there were also, you were able to find and recognize the beauty in among the ash heap. So like you were able to say like, okay, this is a dung heap, but also there were flowers that were growing out of that dung heap. There were things that I've been able to take with me out of that. And so I think, so I hope that this conversation has been validating for other survivors in that respect, where you might not be in the space of everything was bad. And I think that even in this current crisis, I guess that I didn't think I had any parting thoughts, but I guess the thing that I'll say is that today was really tough for me for reasons that I won't go into, but just with things that were happening that have been happening with all of this, there are just some realities that like really, really hit me that was like,
Mhm.
oh my god, like I know, like, oh my gosh, was this really all just completely
Right.
fake? And was every single person that I thought was sincere, that I
Mhm.
thought loved Jesus, was this all just like a scam? And and was it all just a scam? And just like you have those moments. And so
Mhm.
your words have been so helpful and validating. And I hope that other folks feel the same way, that if they're questioning, if they're like, well, like, I kind of felt good about a few of the things. Like, can I still feel good about that? Or should I just throw it all away? Should I just, be like, oh, this sucks? And like, I could sing a song, an IHOP song that I think is an IHOP song, but I won't at this point.
They keep popping.
Because everything like that's been happening to me a lot where I'm like, oh, I've not thought about IHOP in forever, but now like, oh, here's this song that I can
Every
sing.
Misty song.
Every
Now I've
time.
got this
I
song
know,
stuck
right?
in my head. Now I've
Yep.
got this song stuck in my head. I mean, I've had like Baptized by Heart stuck in my head for like the past
Gosh.
5 months, and it's been
That's a
really 4
rough
months.
one, man.
And that's a rough one to have stuck in your head.
Yeah.
That and Eternity. Occasionally, I'm like,
Mhm.
that'll pop into my mind, and I'm like, yo, like all flesh is grass. Like that.
Mhm.
that
It's
like,
the ones
dog.
from the earlier albums, like, cause Missy
Mm.
Pop, she popped like, 2009 or whatever. But
Yep,
the
yep.
Eternity album and them
Look,
little,
look,
like
That
before
was
she
good.
popped,
look,
them
look,
the
but
ones
that,
that
like,
stick
Always
listen,
on
around.
my
like,
mind.
listen,
Yes.
fam,
Listen,
break the
that's when
Yeah.
chains.
she's famous.
Break the
Yes.
chains.
Break
That's
the
a
Chains
banger.
was lit. Like I can
Yeah.
Come
still kind
break
of get into, but like I'm
chains,
like, I mean,
Hey.
that
I mean,
one's
Missy
like
can
real.
blow,
look, like
bro.
I
Like,
I was
can't lie.
still, girl,
The
I was
music
still
is
bumping
good.
that. I was before
Mhm.
all this,
Yeah.
I was still bumping. Like I get in a mood and I'm like, child, let me put on some Break the Chains.
Guess
Let me
it's
put on
triggered.
some You Won't Be Lit. Let
That's
me put on
that
some
one
like,
doesn't even
like
trigger me for whatever reason. I think there's like some kind of purity to it. I mean, I'm sure it does for some people, but that
Man.
one
Ooh,
was
buddy.
just so sweet.
Them rhyming with the medleys, bruh.
Mhm.
Like
okay.
7 or 8 songs in a row. Man.
Mm.
Thurlow and them.
Look,
Let's
and
not
oh
lie. The music
man,
was
yeah,
good.
yeah, Thurlow, man. Oh shoot, with a mighty hand and
Oh yeah,
outstretched
man.
arm.
Ugh,
Mhm.
That one. You put
that's
your
Okay,
ring upon my
sticks.
finger.
confession. On one of my long trips to Tennessee to see my dad, I may or may not have listened to Jesus Your People. I may
You
or may
did?
not have.
Yeah. So my
Oh,
daughter's like favorite song on earth is one of the songs I wrote out there, right? And so she constantly makes me play music that I wrote out there. So it's all filled with like Jesus is
Aw.
the bridegroom coming back, but she like loves the like the beats. I'm like, yeah, mommy wrote these, but these are mommy doesn't believe these. Like, it's really awkward.
That is great.
Really
I
Susan,
like it so much.
you got any final words of any kind?
I could make some up because I can
I
always
mean, I
talk.
don't know if you just had anything you wanted to that you didn't get to
Yeah,
say that you wanted
Benjamin,
to
that
say.
joint. Hey man, that was a bop.
That was
They
real
naming
rough.
all the
Yeah,
bops up in the
but I like
comments.
the Natasha one.
Oh, the
Natasha
all
England.
I wanted.
See,
Oh yes,
Natasha
that's a
Gentry had
bop.
pipes, bro.
Mm.
Yeah. I was
Ooh.
trying to get that indie girl flair, but it wasn't
Yeah,
working.
she had that like voice.
But it was so good. It was so good, man.
She used to go, bro.
Oh, teach me. Yeah. Ain't it funny how that stuff sticks with us, man? It's crazy. Anything, Susan?
Rubio. No, I think Rubio's just gonna take us out now.
All
I'm
right.
ready. He's gonna play us out.
Yeah, I literally just wrote a song while you guys were just chatting. Just
Dang.
Perfect.
I'm ready for it.
the download from heaven just came.
You got that heavenly
Luckily,
music.
subscribe with my scroll. So
That's thank
Wow.
God.
can't exactly songwrite or play guitar that well. So here it
Yes,
goes.
you can. You're
We're
doing
here
it.
for it,
I've
Rubio.
been trying my best to keep myself safe. But all of this tomfoolery is driving me insane. And don't you look at me like that. I'm not the one to blame. Can I explain? else to write their verse. But that's kind of how I feel at the moment.
I love it.
This motherfucker
do
is
it.
driving me insane. Don't look
I
at me.
love it,
I'm not the
man.
one to blame.
I love it. I love it.
I like it.
Y'all hang out with me after we end here for a minute. Y'all take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you next Friday.
Cheers.
Blessings.